Yo, brothers, imagine a top hooligan with such a fierce look that even the Yakuza sweat. Our guy Monite Zero just wants some peace, but everyone thinks he's a beast. He reacts instantly, as if he has zero delay as soon as someone starts teasing or throwing dirt. Returning, Zero sharply responds to the trash crowds he's tired of these rumors. He mockingly tells them to stop looking so scared he didn't even do anything. They say he's a real monster. With one kick he took down an entire gang. Suddenly some crazy kid jumped onto the road right under the wheels of a huge truck. Zero doesn't even think, he just pushes the child aside. He realizes too late that he's about to get hit. The truck stands right over him and he knows it's the end for him. In the last moments, his whole life flashed before his eyes, a life everyone feared. He wakes up in a library, not a scratch on his body. Suddenly a boy in glasses appears and asks, "Is there a client?" Zero asks, "Hey, where is this place?" And the boy says, "This is the memory documents section. Our boy is lost, he was just a second ago saving a child." The boy in glasses reads his papers and says gloomily, "He was really run over by a truck." He tells Zero directly, "So you really are dead." And Zero suddenly realizes this is literally the afterlife world. Surprisingly calm, he was not nervous at all about this whole situation. The librarian is shocked. He accepted his death with the crazy energy of a sprinter. Zero thinks that his life is meaningless since everyone hates him. The guide shows him a crystal ball to prove that people really did care. His little sister sobs uncontrollably and shouts, "Onii-chan." Zero just cannot believe what is unfolding right before him. The guide explains, people did not hate him, they were just afraid. Having learned the truth, he asked, "What will happen next?" That guy offers him a second chance to be reborn. He cannot return home, but he can set off to a completely new world. The librarian says he will use his special power to give him a head start. He rolls several dice to decide Zero's fate in the next life. It's decided, he sets off to a world where spirits and magic exist. In this world, everything revolves around one simple but strange system. The more connected you are to nature, the stronger you become. He gained a new passive skill, Person Favored by Spirits, which grants him fully leveled charisma before magical creatures. The librarian waved goodbye and suddenly showed his true face. He says so indifferently, "I am a god," and at that moment Zero disappears. Zero leaves the library and shouts into the dark void, "Stupid guy with glasses." He wakes up under the wide open sky in the middle of a lush forest. At first, something started crawling on him, and he shouted for that insect to get off. He glanced at the huge mountains and suddenly realized he was no longer in Japan. He remembers that conversation about reincarnation and falling into a pit. Something bites him from behind. He instantly tenses and prepares for battle. He grabs the tiny creature and sees it trembling with fear. Here is a tiny humanoid wearing a stone on its head. And he fires, "Who are you? Can you talk to that little unit?" Zero covers his eyes so the baby won't be scared by his piercing gaze. And then he realizes he is completely blind right at that moment. Suddenly, a whole crowd of tiny spirits emerges from the bushes. In an instant, there are so many of them that they surround him. The entire forest soil is covered with these tiny spirits. They begin to glow and behave extremely friendly towards him. Zero thinks that they are insanely cute and accepts his new life with them. Our guy Zero got into an isekai, a god in glasses, transported him there after a classic truck kun incident. For 5 days he hung out in a cave, hanging out with a flock of spirits he calls chibai. Life is calm, but his little friends simply explode with energy in the morning. He goes out to enjoy the weather and feels as if he has found himself in a real paradise. He decides to take the chibis fishing, let the fun continue. It seems that everything is calm, but our guy suddenly realizes he is actually living in a tutorial zone. Chibis cannot speak, but they start drawing little houses on the ground to communicate. Zero understands that they want to head to the town, and although he likes his cave, he agrees to go and take a look. They had been walking for some time, and the initial excitement about this new world begins to fade. He finally steps onto the stone road and immediately realizes how much he misses modern asphalt. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air. For the first time in 5 days, he notices a human girl. He tries to smile kindly, but his Yankee face is a complete nightmare. The poor girl is so frightened that she offers him all her money just to stay alive. He hasn't even had time to explain that he is good when a pack of goblins arrived and ruined the mood. Zero didn't even sweat and delivered a colossal kick. He tells the monsters to stop pretending to be asleep and prepares to send them to hell. The girl watches in horror as he prepares to erase the small enemies from existence. After Zero defeated the enemies, he noticed that the girl had fainted from the incredible pressure. While she is unconscious, he tries to light a fire, but he has zero survival skills. When the girl finally woke up, she saw spirits and began to lose her mind. She thinks she was kidnapped and begs Zero, "Don't sell me." She begins to panic because she fears that her first time will not be with a prince, but with a scary hooligan. Finally, Zero loses patience and shouts at her, "Shut up already." He explains he saved her life and just wants to start a fire. He asks her if she has a lighter, and she looks at him as if he is some muscular fool. She casually ignited a log with magic, and Zero froze in surprise. Magic, what is that? He asks, thereby directly confirming that he knows nothing about legends. Grace simply could not believe it. Someone does not even know the simplest things about this world. She begins to mutter to herself, convinced that our guy has completely lost his memory. Zero explains that in his old world no one could use magic at all. Grace feels sorry for him and decides to explain that magic is merely the materialization of mana into an element. She says that anyone can do it, so Zero tries to shout fire disappear to extinguish the campfire. Nothing happens there, and in the end he just looks like a clown in front of his new companion. Grace is puzzled, usually so much magic should have done something. Zero got worked up for a second attempt, looking so scary that Grace almost fainted again. Eventually he gave up, pretending to be calm, although his magic was clearly drained. He asks her why she is here at all, and she explains that she wanted to make a contract with a spirit. She is convinced that he lost his memory because he started talking again with his invisible chibi friends. She explains that spirits are tiny elemental creatures that people usually do not see. Zero suddenly realizes that he has a hidden perk of sea spirits when he sees a huge swarm of these creatures around her. Grace explains that making a contract makes a magician exponentially stronger. If you get 3 or more, you will be considered a powerful force at the national level. Zero calls her a child because she is here without any plan and does not really know how to find them. She admits that she just believed a rumor, and Zero calls it a complete trash strategy. He decides to act like a bro and offers to help her. He decided that it was better to set off on a long journey together than alone. The trip, Grace sighed with relief. Being alone in the forest made her literally sweat buckets. Finally, they exchanged names, and he simply introduced himself Zero. She called herself Grace Aura but said it quietly with a slight shyness. She is truly happy finally meeting someone who is not a monster at all, even though his face is frightening. She gives him a warm smile and firmly shakes his hand. The deal is sealed. But the moment of peace is shattered when Zero immediately mispronounces her name. He starts calling her Gusu Aik and stubbornly refuses to write her name correctly. Despite the quarrels, the new team sets their sights on Curado town and sets off on the road. Zero approaches the checkpoint, and the guards immediately lose their composure. His frightening face paralyzes them. Gutsu has to intervene and explain that her companion is actually not a demon from the abyss. As soon as they pass through the gates, our guy finds himself literally surrounded by an army of cute spirits. Finally, they step into Curado town. It seems like an ordinary starting town. Zero looked around, noticed the wildly bright hair colors on everyone, and a bit surprised, asks if this is some strange local trend. Because you say that hair color is connected to magic, her red hair immediately reveals that she is a fire master. Zero tries to force fire magic only by shouting, but because of his brown hair, he is probably doomed to remain with earth magic. Gusu tells him to stop joking, his face is already scary enough. Suddenly, in the middle of the street, a whole gang of thugs attacks an old man and starts mocking him. Before Gusu can blink, Zero disappears from her side to take care of business. He accidentally pushed this burly fool to draw the aggression onto himself. The guy tries to act cool, but Zero simply delivers a brutal blow to the stomach. Seeing this giant fall with one hit, the guy's brother falls into complete panic. Like Zero throws such a cursed look at them that they apologize and instantly take off at record speed. Guess who tries to scold him for being too harsh, and Zero just thinks he was merciful. He even promises that next time he will deliver a real final blow, and that's not at all what she meant. And this old man is Uruji, the legendary blacksmith of the city. As a token of gratitude, he tells Zero to choose any piece of equipment from his shop for free. Zero tries to pretend everything is under control and refuses, but Gusu reminds him he currently has zero defense. Finally, he puts on a light chest armor that looks like a decent mid-game upgrade. When Uruji asks which legendary blade he wants, Zero simply asks for an iron pipe. Gusu, who starts getting worked up, because in the rules of this world that literally doesn't count as a weapon. Zero assures, a few nails in the pipe and you'll get a real top build. Uruji actually loves that chaotic energy and gladly agrees to fulfill this unique request. While the old man pounds on the anvil in the forge, Gusu goes off to get supplies and food. Zero asks her to buy bandages but doesn't say why yet. Left alone, Zero just chills next to the local spirits who seem to worship him. He begins to tap his fingers strangely, as if a sign of friendship with every chibi spirit in the room. It's incredibly pleasant to see how a guy who looks like a final boss treats the little ones so casually. Finally, the creation process is complete. Zero pulled out his new weapon and was surprised to feel that it was incredibly light for its size. Gutsu just glanced and instantly understood. The old man really made a pipe from mithril. This is a stock of the best materials for the equipment of holy knights, not for a stupid stick. Zero is indifferent to legends, he simply wraps the bandages to get the perfect grip. He sincerely thanks the old man for the divine loot and is about to set off. Two go to the tavern to spend the night, but awkwardness tightens in the air when the owner asks if one room will be enough for them. Gusu immediately starts sweating heavily and demands 2 separate rooms. Until everything becomes strange, she throws a wild tantrum because she believes that Zero, by oversleeping, completely ruined their schedule. She is sure if he had woken her up earlier, they would already be in the spirit forest, not wasting time. Time passes, and our guy loses patience, especially when she admits that she only maybe knows the real route. Externally, the girl literally relies exclusively on pure RNG intuition to find the legendary place. She explains that the spirits transform the surrounding environment into something like a masterpiece in super high definition, with pure water and fertile soil. Zero suddenly realized the chibis he hung out with perfectly matched this description. She was completely lost, so he decided to stop wandering and lead them forward himself. Gusu instantly became wary. She fears that he is leading her into some suspicious, dark forest. But when Zero threatens to leave her behind, she finally decides to follow him. They reach Gyro's base, and before them stands a giant forest, completely hidden from the whole world. He greets this place as if seeing an old friend, as if he just came out of a long leveling session, and is finally returning to his save point. Gusufro's magical power flows from every tree here. She can hardly believe it. This hidden zone really exists, but there is no evidence of it in any historical book. Our guy finally blurted out what he really is, an ice guy protagonist from another world. Dusu thinks that this explains his strange clothes and complete lack of magical knowledge, and Zero begins to feel a little sad, wondering if his Chibai friends love him only because of that cheat skill. But Gusu gives him a rare victory, saying that being friends and having skills are 2 completely different things. Everything becomes truly serious when she sternly warns him to keep his ability to see spirits a secret. If high-level players found out about this, they would try to kidnap him, force him to sign contracts with spirits, and level up their stats. This idea turns Zero into a wild beast. He promises to pin down anyone who dares to touch his Chibai brothers. Although Gusu does not see them, she feels that they are so sincere when they are near Zero. Gusu sweats with excitement because she still does not understand how to sign a contract. After a week of failures, she is depressed, ready to delete her account, and calls herself a loser. Zero notices a new spirit and rushes to help her make a deal. He even defended her by whispering to the spirit that beneath all that salt, Gusu hides a good person. Zero offers to do this to cement their friendship, which instantly causes Gusu to panic. It turns out it is just a light touch of a finger, a sign of friendship. Gusu finally puts everything in its place. She could not get a contract because Zero accidentally took all the spirits in this area. She breathes out with relief. She is not some trash mob, but still blames Zero for all this misunderstanding. Suddenly, the spirit really approaches her and offers a trade. Finally, Gusu's sight clears, and she sees the little spirit for the first time. The spirit is ready to make a contract, and Gusu simply soars with pure joy. Our guy smiled slyly, glad that she finally pulled out her first big prize. Even in her sleep, she mumbles under her breath that Zero is to blame for everything. A few days after Gusu Aik made a deal with the fire spirit, the carriage was still shaking on the road to the capital. But the journey suddenly slows down. Gusu looks like she is about to vomit. Our guy will not tolerate this and scolds her for not saying earlier about the nausea on the road. Lately, she has been acting suspiciously, hiding under a heavy cloak, even when it is unbearably hot in the carriage. Suddenly pulling her into the bushes, he felt a sense of danger. He forces her to keep her head low while they sweep the perimeter. A pack of goblins is rummaging nearby, and they seem ready to launch an attack. Gusu tries to move forward and use her spirit magic to deal with the threat. But the main hero does not wait for the cast bar. He rushes straight into the thick of the battle without hesitation. The goblins noticed him, but they simply cannot keep up with his lightning speed. And he lives by one simple rule: in battle, the one who strikes first wins. He starts scattering these trash mobs as if they were empty toys. One goblin instantly doubled over from a powerful kick right to the chest. He towers over the rest of the monsters like a true raid boss. After clearing the field, he wipes the blood and bathes in adrenaline after the fight. He notices strange black ornaments falling from the corpses. Could this be rare loot? Meanwhile, stress got the better of Gusu, and she completely fainted. They decided to set up camp. For the night, the girl had no mana left at all. The main character hands her a bundle of medicine. Chibai prepared it to help her recover. He firmly ordered her not to move while he went to gather firewood. He behaves like a big jerk. His words are oppressive, and she feels like a burden. She looks completely broken and apologizes for being useless. The atmosphere suddenly becomes incredibly awkward, and our guy realizes he has ruined their social connection. She sits silently and wonders why she is even in this adventure. Compared to his strength, she feels like a simple NPC. For a moment, the host clenched his teeth, remembering how he wanted to become a better person in this new life. He burst out with an irritated scream because he doesn't know how to calmly talk about his feelings. Finally, he tells her, "Speak out, say everything on your mind." She looks at him with those huge anime eyes and asks if he will really listen to her story. She says she has a sister and she is just a pro at everything. She just wants her family to finally accept her as a real witch. Suddenly she realizes her story is like a mirror of his own past life. He remembers being a bully whom everyone feared and no one even tried to understand. He simply tells her seeking approval from lousy people is a trap. He promises if someone starts talking crap, he will personally punch them in the face. Finally, she smiles and thanks him for carrying her. Even the spirits root for her when she finally falls asleep. The next morning, the main character woke up and saw a plate with something that looked like real poison before his eyes. It turned out she tried to make breakfast and it was a complete disaster. He grumbles indignantly that her food has more deadly intent than the monsters they fought. He laughed, realizing she is just naive and protected, a bit frivolous. Finally, they take the right course again and head to the capital Alpha. Massive walls appear before the eyes. This place is a true giant among fortresses. A giant queue stretches near the gates, a real nightmare for their pace. Gusu tells him, stop worrying about the check and just do as she says. She pulls him forward, slipping right past the queue. The guards instantly notice them and rush towards them. The host thinks he is about to be banned for breaking the rules. But instead of grabbing them, the guards fall to their knees and greet her as one who has returned home. They call her Grey-sama, and it is immediately clear that her level is much higher than she pretended. Our guy's brain completely shuts down. He looked at her in shock, not believing which VIP person he had been traveling with all this time. Grace knows they can't just hang around the castle gates, so she leads our guy inside to settle him in. The guards immediately fall to their knees as soon as they see her face, and Zero remains completely bewildered. He strains his brain, trying to figure out the situation, and decides that she is actually the daughter of some corrupt merchant. He even tells her, go and burn in the fire, because he considers her just a spoiled brat. They approach this huge top-level castle, and Zero still can't put the puzzle together. He directly asks if she is blackmailing the entire staff just to get inside even a little. Suddenly, when Grace's older sister arrived, a huge aura of pure step-on-me energy appeared. This cool person is clearly the same talented relative everyone talks about, and Grace is already sweating. The sister immediately went on the offensive, sharply scolding Grace for trying to avoid meeting their father. Suddenly, she notices Zero and decides he is too mediocre for her castle, so she orders the guards to throw him out. Our guy is simply furious. This woman called him a disgusting monster. Zero will not allow some royal arrogance to weaken him, so he tells her he is also ready to fight if she doesn't mind. The sister froze in shock at his vulgar swearing, but Grace finally gathered her courage and intervened. Then she announces that Zero is her friend and guest, thereby pulling aggro away from him. When they were leaving, Zero couldn't resist and threw in another jab. He tells his sister that she would look more formidable if her legs didn't tremble like a leaf. The sister is simply boiling with contempt, but the group keeps moving forward. They find themselves in a room that looks like it belongs to a real whale, that is, someone who spends crazy money. Grace finally drops a lore bomb. It turns out she is the second princess of the Kingdom of Orphans. She is afraid that our guy will start acting strange or get angry because she hid the secret. Zero just looks at her with an empty gaze and asks, so what? He lightly taps her on the head to shake off her panic. To him, she is just a friend, and he would never get down on his knees like some pumped-up idiot. Grace feels relieved that her friend is still a true savage, even if he calls her an idiot. Just then, Lily's personal maid appears with a tray and a tea set. At first, she seems like an ordinary waifu introducing herself instantly, without any pause. Grace is going to change clothes because she needs to prepare for an official meeting with the king. The second blessing disappeared, the air became poisonous, and Zero heard a loud click of a tongue. Lily instantly stops pretending, calls him a stinging insect, and tells him not to look at her. Zero understands that this maid is two-faced and mean, only good when the boss is watching. She directly tells him, go die, Grace is not here to hear this poison. Zero simply goes crazy at how rudely this little brat treats him. But just when everything is about to boil over, Grace returns in an official dress, like a legendary pillar of tears. Lily instantly returns to the image of a flawless maid, pretending to be a victim of her own clumsiness. Grace takes the bait and with pain in her voice, asks Zero to forgive the girl for the misunderstanding. While Grace smiles, Lily throws the most arrogant face in history at Zero, one that makes you want to hit her. Zero is about to rush at her life at full speed, but Grace begs him to calm down. They finally reach the massive doors of the throne room to meet the big boss. Grace forces him to promise, keep yourself together and don't say anything unnecessary to her father. Zero gave her a look as if saying, trust me, brother, when the door finally opened. Finally, Grace returns to the palace and finds herself before her father, the king. Our guy Zero just stands next to his team of spirits, completely unimpressed by the royal atmosphere. The daughter of King Amari's immediately starts acting boldly, demanding that Zero kneel before her father. Grace looks like she's about to lose it, and the spirits literally tremble in their boots. Zero understands that for now he must play along, so he finally kneels to keep the peace. Amari's doesn't calm down and grumbles about some commoner entering the palace, but the king coldly puts her in her place, calling Zero a guest. Zero is boiling with rage inside, thinking that the name Q-Swama or bitch perfectly suits this toxic sister. The king looms over Grace, breathing down her neck and asking if she understands what her sudden disappearance has led to. Grace tries to maintain dignity and sincerely apologizes. But the king is not interested in her feelings and coldly asks what she really gained from her selfish journey. Grace tries to find words to explain herself while the pressure of the throne room weighs on her. She finally spoke up, shining with delight, announcing that she had managed to make a contract with a spirit. Amaris even tries to stand up for her, hoping that this will finally make the king accept Grace, but the king simply explodes, calling her a fool and ordering her to know her place. He claims that her immaturity is the real reason why she couldn't make a contract before, completely ignoring her stunning victory. The king barked, "Get out of my sight," and when Amaris tried to object, he instantly silenced her. Grace looks completely broken as she quietly agrees to go alone to her room and think. She pretends everything is calm and tells Zero that she will prepare a room for him. But our guy can't calm down at all when he sees his friends being treated like trash moms. He strokes her head and says that staying silent is simply impossible for him. Zero directs his anger at the king and Amaris and demands Kusawama to shut up. He shouts that she should be praised for surviving a dangerous journey and growing up. The king looks offended because the peasant responds and even asks how stupid Zero is. Zero does not back down, asking the king if he really thinks she was just chasing success. He calls the king a complete idiot for treating his own daughter like a blemish. The king finally explodes and orders the guards to seize this insolent scoundrel. Zero just smirked and challenged him. Come here, he is ready to take on the aggression of the entire castle, deal with the guards, and even with that lousy sister if necessary. He looks intently at Grace and sharply says, "Say something right now before the chance is gone." Zero reminds her that she left home because she hated everyone looking down on her. Finally, Grace intervened, but instead of fighting, she simply apologized it was her fault that someone stumbled. She orders her sister to be quiet, stating that it is her business, she, as the queen, must deal with it. Grace admits that she was reckless and then suddenly gives her father a quiet smile. She confesses that although Zero speaks harshly, hearing someone express feelings aloud was refreshing, and Zero stubbornly tries to take the blame, shouting that he did everything himself to protect her. The king, realizing that they are both acting on their own, finally orders Zero to be taken to the guest room. Later that night, Zero lazily rested in his room and wondered, wouldn't the law ease up on him? A maid appears with a tray of food, but frankly tells him that she wishes he would be executed. And she begins to hurl insults, calling him a lousy insect for putting Grace in trouble. She explains that because of his stunt, Grace could really lose her right to the throne. The maid warns him that rumors are already circulating that Grace has fallen by bringing someone like him. Zero unexpectedly shows self-awareness and admits that he speaks like a real scoundrel. He tells the maid that he simply could not accept that Grace's relatives did not allow her to receive praise. The maid calls him a fool for making enemies of everyone around, and Zero says he won't change for anyone. And just as she leaves, she quietly thanks him, and our guy remains completely puzzled. Zero looks out the window, trying to clear his head while his team of spirits hangs out. He decides he must find Grace to talk about their next move, but the castle is a real maze. He gets completely lost in the tangled corridors in the middle of the night. Accidentally ending up right under Amari's door, he hears her raging inside. He peeks through the door expecting a fight but instead sees something much stranger. It turns out the older sister was actually terribly scared of Zero's creepy eyes, and left alone she started crying. And Zero is stunned had been sweating from fear all this time. But then it gets stranger, sees her take out her younger sister's doll. She presses the doll to herself and can't stop thinking about how much she loves Grace. Zero realizes he just got into a huge sister complex and thinks, this is very bad. He whispers to his spirits to immediately erase this memory from their heads. But suddenly Grace appears behind him and looking suspiciously, asks what he is doing by her sister's door. Zero, in complete panic, tensely tries to pretend that he is just returning to his room. Grace apologizes for bothering her sister and says she is leaving. Zero realizes, if he goes back now, the crazy sister inside will definitely kill him. Zero suddenly realizes he has stepped on a huge mine when the princess's older sister corners him. Gosu Yuyaki tries to quietly disappear before everything turns into a mess. But the sister doesn't let anyone go until she talks to each one. Grace actually thinks that Zero is trying to impress her relatives, but that's the last thing on his mind. As soon as she disappeared, our guy immediately tries to escape. Unfortunately, the sister does not hesitate at all and drags him straight into her private chambers. The room becomes heavy when she pours a cup of tea, into which real poison is mixed. She defiantly looks him in the eyes and asks if he saw how she embarrassed herself earlier. Suddenly, a dagger whistled past his head. It was a warning shot. And then Zero finally loses patience and starts barking back at her. She is sure that he is some small player trying to blackmail her. He immediately cuts it off and firmly says that he is not a coward. The sister insists. When she acts as a guard, she is just trying to be a good sister. Zero hits her with a final bomb of truth, called her a complete siskin. He decisively tells her to hush and listen to his advice as a veteran. If she continues to be that muscular fool, Gusuayaki will eventually hate her forever. The sister suddenly feels that the distance between them is really growing. Zero starts slipping her lines he read in a book to manipulate the situation. He throws out the idea to become a bridge between them, so they can finally be honest with each other. She sincerely believes in the strategy of her best friend. Just as he thought he escaped, she grabs him again to remind him what is at stake. She whispers a promise: "I will lay flowers on his grave if he reveals her secret." Zero stands his ground and promises to help them get closer. He sincerely smiles at her and admits that he has already lost hope for his sister, who stayed at home. This actually makes the villain blush for a moment as he leaves. Later that night, he finds Grace sitting relaxed on the balcony. He accidentally sneaks up and scares her to death. They sat silently next to each other, looking at the stars together. Grace sincerely thanks him for helping her feel refreshed. She openly admits her deepest desire is for her father to finally recognize her as a princess. She strives to become a leader whom people can truly trust. Even if she is exiled, she will stubbornly hold her head high. Zero feels the full responsibility for the mess he has made. Grace jokingly asks if he will take responsibility for her if she gets kicked out. Zero took the matter seriously and promised to find her a job and a roof over her head. The thought that she will no longer be next to Zero hits her painfully. Our guy smiles sadly, remembering that in his previous life he always played alone. When he sees that someone truly wants to stay close, it sincerely warms his soul. Gray pulls him out of his inner monologue with one quick pinch. She suggests let's go on a journey together. They will travel the world until Zero finds his purpose. Seeing her smile like that, Zero realizes how incredible she is. He thinks about how, coming into this world and meeting these chibis, he felt true satisfaction. Making new friends along the way, well, that's not such a bad grind. But first they will have to deal with the king sitting on his throne. The king recalled the chaos of yesterday. He demands to see proof that Grace can really make contracts with spirits. To decide this, he gives them an unexpected quest. It has already been 2 months since Zero got stuck in this new world. Now he is riding in the royal carriage, so shiny and pompous that it feels uncomfortable. Our guy knows they stand out to any enemy. But Amaris is a complete fool who thinks his authority will protect him. Life and Grace are equally naive. They think there is not a single rebel in the whole country. Zero is already sweating because he knows this trip will be a real disaster. All this confusion started back at the castle when the king decided to test Grace's power. Since she made a contract with a spirit, they will have to check if she can really pull her weight. The mission is simple: head east, find the lizardmen's nest near the village and destroy them. Amaris went with them, but since they set up camp, she has been a constant headache. While Zero carries all the heavy work, she just stands and complains like a real bitch. Even the maid mocks him. She literally kicks Zero while he lies down. She pulls him aside alone and pours out a bunch of important secrets from the past. They say there is some group somewhere that fiercely hates the royal family and wants it gone. She warns him the real threat does not come from outside, but hides within the kingdom itself. Zero realizes that this bright carriage is nothing but a huge target on their backs. They will have to seriously disguise themselves if they want to survive the trip to the village. Zero decisively tells the group, "Leave the carriage to me." While the girls are busy preparing food, he puts his secret trump cards into play. These chibis are incredibly useful and immediately get to work. The next morning, the maid is simply deeply shocked by what she sees. The shiny royal carriage was completely transformed into an ordinary cart overnight. This is a crazy speedrun of repairs, as if something physically shouldn't be possible. Finally, they arrived at the village to inspect the area and understand where what is. The village elder confirms the lizard folk have made a nest in a cave about an hour's journey away. Zero wants to learn even more, but Amaris stops him on the spot. She presses her rank and insists that because of her experience, she should lead. The mage quickly interrupted, decisively reminding everyone that this is Grace's quest. Finally, they reach the cave, and at the entrance, they are greeted by a blazing bonfire. The group quietly sneaks in and counts how many of them there are. But Amaris can't calm down at all and immediately stands out in plain sight. She says that the one who strikes first will win, and that's the dumbest logic there could be. Zero literally loses his mind and yells at her, "Turn on your brain at least once." Her perfect plan is to handle 5 monsters herself, while the rest of the squad takes on another 4. Zero is really worried about the RNG that such a buffed fool ended up on the team. He realizes with horror, these girls don't even see the chibis, so communication turns into a real nightmare. He decides that they need to retreat to the village to finally use their heads. Amaris pretends to be cool and defiantly asks why she should listen to him. Zero turns around and gives her a look that would erase the final boss. His aura was so terrible that the whole group instantly gave up and agreed to retreat. The team needs to get their builds together before chaos starts. Usaku starts, She admits that she has a contract with only one spirit that enhances her fire magic. Lily is a maid who brilliantly controls ice magic and has her own spirit helper. She is definitely a top support, showing how instantly she controls ice without any delay. But she has a nasty trait: she accidentally shot our guy with an ice shard. She pretends to be completely frivolous, saying that her hand just slipped. Then the Princess Knight Amaku starts boasting about her legendary equipment. She is in shining clean mithril armor and confidently believes that only she has meta-level equipment. Our guy is not impressed and shows that his seemingly simple iron pipe is actually also the highest grade mithril. She tries to provoke his buff, banging on the pipe to see if it will crack. But the quality is so unreal that her own equipment looks like starter loot. She instantly breaks out in sweat and immediately accuses him of being a thief. Grace has to intervene and stand up for him before the team dynamics completely fall apart. While they argue, our guy is actually playing 4D chess with his invisible chibis. He sent them on reconnaissance because only he can see these small but sturdy creatures. He knows the first move is the only way to get through this quest in record time. He throws out the information. 15 lizard folk are waiting in the straight tunnel. The maid felt something was wrong and sharply demanded where he got that information from. Grace panics and says that it is his skill to keep his secrets safe. She tells them that God actually gave him a cheat code for gathering information. The maid considers herself just a fool, but for now agrees with the explanation. Our guy got a little emotional and admitted he doesn't want anyone from the party to fall. He calls the girls cute nicknames, and because of this, the burly knight and the maid completely lose their composure. Grace feels left out of the nickname club and throws a tantrum. He gently stroked her head to calm her down, and this turned out to be a real critical hit to her heart. He sincerely thanks her for the help, and she instantly blushes and gets completely flustered. But that heartfelt moment instantly shatters when he calls them silly sisters. Finally, they reach the place where the enemy appeared and saw the lizard folk guarding the cave entrance. Imagine the girls actually fell asleep right during the wait, a real rookie mistake. Our guy wakes them up without any gentleness. The raid is about to start. The Chubis confirm the small mobs have finally quieted down and fallen asleep. The plan is simple: flood the entrance and let the water do its job so their magical strikes become more devastating. Amaku is supposed to drop a lightning-fast nuclear bomb right into the puddle to paralyze everyone. And our guy is thrilled, considering this strategy pure perfection. The princess actually turns on her brain. She suggests building an ice wall and driving the enemies into a deadly zone. Our guy is just shocked. She really came up with something decent. The maid finishes the last preparations, and the aura around the group suddenly becomes tense. They stare into the dark abyss of the cave, anxiously waiting for the first move. The trap is set. Our guy is ready to take this fight upon himself. It's time to find out whether this teamwork is real or just a disaster about to happen. Grace tightens her grip on the weapon, ready to prove she is not just a talisman. Our guy starts banging a frying pan to draw enemies out of the darkness. The plan works instantly. A scaly villain emerges from the bushes. A whole squad of lizard folk rushes their position without any fear or pity. Gasaka completely loses self-control and lets out a terrified scream. She, gripped by panic, releases a huge wave of black lightning that even caught our guy by surprise. Magic is pure chaos, and the main hero must rush into battle to prevent the team's total annihilation. He somehow manages to repel this wild, raw magic, and the girls remain amazed. How does he even have such a body? While the lizard folk are still advancing, Grace decides finally her turn to carry. She shouts that monsters are best made crispy while charging a huge spell. Our guy tries to tell her to slow down a bit, but she is already going full throttle, a true glass cannon. A powerful flash blinds the whole group, and the lightning wipes out everything in its path. When the smoke cleared, it was visible that Grace had actually rushed through the entire skirmish. All the lizard people here were turned into coal. Grace looks terribly self-satisfied, and our guy is boiling with rage. She almost destroyed the entire cave. He starts counting the corpses and instantly realizes RNG is malfunctioning. Suddenly, a survivor jumped out of the shadows and launched an ambush attack. Before the main hero could even react, Gyusaku sharply pushed him out of the danger zone. The blow threw her back, and she flew into the darkness of the cave. Our guy roared when he realized that the kid had just taken a hit that was meant for him. He doesn't even wait for a plan. He storms the cave head-on, like a real bruiser. Inside, Jesuku again remembers how much she wanted her father to praise her. The main hero is insanely furious, calls himself a fool, and his rage has reached its peak. He looks the lizard straight in the eyes and mockingly ridicules his pathetic accuracy. He is now in a full berserker state, says he doesn't even feel pain. He shortens the distance and instantly begins to twist the lizardman. He stands over the mangled remains and looks like a real nightmare. Grace catches up and prepares to finish it off with another powerful high-level spell. She shouts "die" and drops another nuclear bomb in the cramped room. The main hero barely manages to take cover from his own fire. Lily stands on the threshold and watches, praying that the whole mountain does not collapse. Grace rejoices at her one-hit kill, while the main hero literally coughs up dust. He yells at her, calling her a muscular fool because she almost caused a collapse. The ceiling immediately begins to crack, proving that he was right. Stones were falling around, and he suddenly saw a strange glowing egg on the ground. He grabs the prey in his hands and Grace shouts to him, "Just run." They barely manage to get out of the tunnel when the entrance collapses behind them. Grace pretends as if it's nothing, and MC is just happy that they weren't buried. He looked at Gyusuka, but she stood as if she had seen a ghost. She is staring intently at their hands, and a creepy aura emanates from her. It turns out the main character and Grace are still holding hands since that escape. Gazuka turns into a real yandere and obsessively demands why they are so affectionate. Grace immediately panics and tries to explain what happened. Gusko starts throwing a wild tantrum after all. She has never even held hands with anyone. Meanwhile, while the girls argue, the little spirits just watch and sigh with relief the chaos is finally over. Grace is covered with painful burns from that fireball, but overall she is okay. She is a fire witch, so naturally resistant to being roasted alive. She notices that Zero is bleeding, anxiously asks if he staggered, but he is only worried about her. Our guy strokes her head to calm her down, a true pro gamer move. Everything around tenses up the moment Zero takes out the mysterious black egg he took from the lizardman. Amaku can't stand it and slaps him right in the face. She is drenched in sweat and asks if he feels any strange discomfort or malaise. She drew her sword and decisively asked if he is connected to the Spirit Liberation Squad. Zero is simply puzzled. These chibi are so relaxed, it seems they don't need any liberation at all. Amaku is ready to erase him, everything depends on his next words. Zero stands his ground, clearly making it known. He is not an enemy and does not belong to any strange cult. He smiles slyly. If I wanted to harm them, I would have finished everything long ago and run away. Grace rushed to defend him, reminding her sister that he is a complete novice in this world. Zero feels the pressure tightening, his hands begin to sweat incredibly. Amaku sharply tells him to stop talking nonsense. Suddenly he realizes he is paralyzed by the fear that the group might hate him. He recalls his past life and how he always pretended to be a rude person to hide his feelings. He laughs as if dispelling tension, and the girls understand. The stone he has is a danger of the highest order. He explains that he has just begun to figure out how everything is arranged here. And then he drops a nuclear bomb. I am from another world. Amaku immediately strikes him in the face again. She considers him a pathetic liar and threatens to properly interrogate him in the dungeon. Grace finally can't stand it and stands right between their weapons. Both are furious and tell her to step out of the splash zone. Grace shouts that she will start to hate them both if they do not stop this quarrel right now. This threat hits harder than the ultimate boss and forces them both to put away their swords. Grace says she sincerely believes in Zero. After all, when they first met, he knew nothing about magic. She emphasizes that although his eyes are frightening, he did not try to cheat to grab the rewards. She even teased him, saying Zero-san is not that skilled after all. Even the Chibis have already started mocking Zero. Finally, Amiko agrees to a temporary truce, all for the sake of her sister. They lit a campfire to finally discuss what the true story of this world is. The world, it seems the Spirit Liberation Squad believes that spirits are higher beings who should not be controlled by humans. Zero froze, staring at the black stone, unable to comprehend how it could fit into the goal. Amaku explains that this stone is a cursed object that drains the magical power of whoever holds it. Grace, unable to hold back, asks, what does this debuff actually do to a person's body? In the worst case, the victim falls into a coma and never wakes up again. Amaris asks the girls to just lightly tap it, let them see the effect for themselves. Just a light touch and it's as if their internal batteries run down. And then Zero simply lifts the whole thing, and as if there is emptiness inside him, he feels absolutely nothing. They realize that this item probably only gives random effects to those who were born in this world. Grace begins to piece together a crazy assumption about our guy. She asks Zero if he can't use magic at all. Amaku goes crazy, this simply must be mechanically impossible. Zero firmly asks her to quiet down so Grace can get to the point. Grace announces the last shocking news of this session. It's not that he was weakened or that he just reads spells poorly. Our guy literally has not a shred of magical power in his entire body. Amari simply can't believe her ears. Zero just admitted that he has zero magic. In his world, no one practices magic, so he is effectively playing a different game. She starts to get nervous. It doesn't compute how someone can survive without mana. Zero just hits her with logic. He says he has flasks of water and a fire striker, so he is not panicking. He laughed off his flaw, but Amari's lost her composure and with one strike pinned him down for that recklessness. Our guy grumbles about friendly fire as they make their way along the huge cliffs. Zero pressed Amari's against the wall, persistently questioning her about the political side of things and the rebels she mentioned earlier. Finally, she reveals the secret and everyone finds out. She is actually the deputy captain of the Royal Knights. Zero suddenly realizes that she is not just an ordinary fool. while Lily asks how intense the uprising is becoming. Amaris explains that the Spirit Liberation Squad is gaining momentum because people are tired of the royal family. Zero notices a pattern and suddenly understands. Monsters usually do not specifically hunt humans. Usually these small mobs attack you only when you step into their territory. But lately they have been launching lightning attacks on real human villages. Zero pulls out a black stone, wondering if it is the source of this cursed malfunction. Amaris is confused because there is no mention that monsters carried these stones that drain mana. It is a real mystery why the stone does not weaken the monsters at all. Grace intervened, recalling how that rock seemed to try to suck everything out of her to the last drop, just by touching it. Zero asks the spirits to reveal ancient secrets, but they look scared and refuse to speak. Finding no more clues, the squad decides to complete the mission and head back to the village. They arrive at the village but find it constantly shrouded in thick fog. Grace thinks this is a celebration for her, but Zero reminds her that she is a burly fool and orders everyone to duck down. From the bushes, they noticed a group of hooded thugs prowling in search of princesses. Amaris confirms that these guys are from the Spirit Liberation Squad. They realized the rebels were hunting specifically for Amaris and Grace. It turned out their lavish carriage was a real beacon for the enemy. Lily and Amaris are ready to kill, but Zero says to wait. He explodes at them. How can you rush inside without checking where the enemies are standing? Zero tells them that striking first is his job, and they must remain hidden. He uses the fog as a tactical advantage, and asks Lily if the carriage is ready for a quick departure. Lily is exhausted, but still agrees to take the wheel of the escape vehicle. Zero throws a terrible look at the girls, ordering them to keep deadly silence. The princesses hiding are trembling in their boots. As they approach the village entrance, the guards stand across the road and block their way. Lily whispers to Zero, "Hide the girls under the cover and I will do the talking." The guards instantly stop the carriage. They demand to know, why is someone setting out so early? Lily looks back and asks her master for advice on what to do. Zero is confused by the name change, and Lily readily gets into the role. The guard saw Zero's terrifying face and thought he was a real ogre. Lily apologizes, saying her master is a hot-tempered giant. She weaves a tale about a journey to the hot springs and returning to their estate. She constantly mocks Zero's personality to pass off lies as truth, while Zero sits behind and boils with rage. The guards decide they don't need smoke, they let the carriage pass. Lily smiles mockingly. The plan worked perfectly even if Zero is dying inside. The girls giggled at the master's joke as the carriage drove away. Zero's blood pressure breaks all records. Amaris and Grace couldn't hold back their mockery of him, joyfully celebrating their successful escape. Our guy just wants to make it back to the capital before he loses his mind. The squad rushes into the distance, successfully avoiding the rebels' blockade. Amaris questions the group. She is still trying to understand why the rebels are hunting them. Zero and Grace were completely shocked by the mention of a possible conspiracy. Amaris delivers a harsh truth. Without the spirits, the country won't even be able to hold on. In essence, if the sisters were captured, the rebels would use them as bargaining chips, demanding the release of the spirit. With him, Grace is clearly frightened by the very thought that she might become a hostage. She shouts to Lily, "Step on the gas, we need to immediately tell father about this mess." Zero suddenly realizes, this is no longer a simple escort mission, everything is much more complicated. When they arrived at the castle, they were greeted by a huge man. This burly guy is golemless, and it is clear that he is insanely happy to see Amaris again. Amaris proudly introduces him as the captain of the knightly order. Gomeless had already heard rumors about some foul-mouthed guy who brazenly defied the king. He starts laughing wildly, almost giving a friendly half-clap on the back. Zero will not tolerate this and calls that man a bloody old man straight to his face. Grace broke out in a sweat because you don't just talk to the captain of the knights like that. Gomeless, clearly impressed by his fearlessness, offers Zero a place in the order. And Zero, with one instant retort, makes it clear zero interest in joining such a stuffy squad. When K-Zero left, Amaris grew gloomier and seriously informed the captain that they had encountered a squad of rebels in the village. This confirms that their intelligence data has leaked, and for the kingdom's security, this is a real alarm signal. They head straight towards the throne room to see the king. Amaris looked irritated. K-Zero had simply come to the royal audience as if it were a trivial matter. The king sharply silenced her and coldly told Grace that it was time for her official report. Grace takes a deep breath and prepares to tell everything that happened. She confirms the lizard men's lair in the east has been razed to the ground. But there is one insidious detail. She mentions a mysterious black stone lying next to the monster's body. Amara steps forward and explains that the rebels were specifically hunting the princesses. The king looks as if he is about to lose his mind from this troubling news. He decisively orders Grace, submit a full written report as soon as possible. Then he asks Amaris to help her sister while they prepare a room for their guest. Zero is really angry because the king behaves like a cold NPC, not like a dad. Just before leaving, the king finally softened and quietly said to Grace, "You did well." Grace looks as if she just pulled out a five-star character. She is simply glowing with happiness. Zero smiled mockingly, glad to see that the old man finally showed at least a drop of human emotion. While the castle finishes its affairs, Zero stands and watches as the sisters set off to handle their royal duties. Suddenly, he feels that both Grace and Amari's are sweating with anxiety for the future of their people. True royal duties lie upon them, they cannot be cast aside so easily. Zero stands in the corridor, completely lost in thought. He begins to doubt his path in this world. "What should I do?" he asks, feeling the weight of the situation. Then Lily watches him walk away and feels that our guy is going through a serious internal crisis. Zero is stuck in his thoughts and could not decide whether he should continue wandering from place to place. He knows he can't run forever, but accepting it is very hard. Dusuku sharply brought him back to reality, calling him a fool for zoning out during her story. Honestly, watching these two argue like an old married couple is pure pleasure. Gosuku mysteriously begins telling legends, and says he must investigate the mysterious Black Stone and the Spirit Liberation Squad. So their big adventure was greatly postponed. Our guy tries to act macho and reassures her, "Don't worry." But the princess has a completely different plan. She is convinced that Zero will just be locked up in the castle with her. Zero is completely confused and doesn't understand why, seriously, he will have to live in the palace forever. Gyusuku starts sweating heavily. He is terrified that he will abandon her and leave alone. She bursts out with aggression and insists that he stay after all they promised. Even Amari's bursts in, saying it's too dangerous to let someone like him roam free. Yusuko declares, "Zero is mine and only I can watch over him." She looked at her sister with such a gaze that even a raid boss would tremble. She warns Amari's that Zero is the guy who needs to be kept on a short leash. Zero literally feels a chill from all this tense atmosphere. Later that night, Zero relaxes with Chibis while Gyusuku finishes the paperwork. The castle seems calm, but something feels off in the air. Zero feels that he is already in the way. It's time to step back and let the princess shine on her own. Then suddenly the maid Lily runs in with a basket of treats, completely ignoring his personal space. He feels that these treats are just a cover for a serious conversation. Then Lily gets straight to the point without unnecessary words and asks what his real ultimate goal is. Zero admits, when someone like him walks alongside Gyusuku, it just ruins her PR. Lily looks relieved, happy that at least a few of his brain cells are working. She doesn't consider him a villain, but she feels it's better for him to leave the capital. This is not just for the princess, it is for his own survival. She says directly, he is a true unique because he sees spirits. Zero pretends as if he does not care, but he knows she is right. So it turns out, he is not as inconspicuous as he imagines. He talks to the air all the time. He asks why his abilities are a sufficient reason to run away from here. Lily dropped a bomb. The Spirit Liberation Squad is probably already inside the castle walls. If those bastards in black cloaks find out about Zero, they will hunt him down. They have connections at the highest levels, and they will stop at nothing to find out everything about the spirits. Suddenly, Zero realizes his presence actually puts Gyusuku in even greater danger. He is just shocked she trusts him with all this information. He lightly slaps her on the forehead, calling her a fool for worrying so much. "And if I don't believe you, then who should I believe in this world?" he says like a true main hero. Lily confesses she also wants him to stay, but the risk is just too great. Zero strokes her head one last time, although she threatens to delete him for it. Under the cover of night, he hurriedly packs his gear to get out as soon as possible. They meet in a secret corner behind huge walls. Lily checks once more if he forgot anything, and only then does he set off into the unknown. He leaves, throwing out the typical, "See you, lousy maid." She slyly smiled in response, and while he was leaving, threw back, "You are a stinky bug." Today, as the sun just began to rise, Zero suddenly realized he probably took too few things. He turns around to ask the spirits for advice and receives the biggest shock of his life. The Chibai army simply exploded in numbers. A huge crowd of spirits now trails behind him, and this will definitely attract the enemy's attention. Zero realized he could no longer ignore the Spirit Liberation Squad after seeing a spirit suffer. He realizes that with this team behind him, he will never play alone again. He decides to stop worrying and just rely on his instincts. It's time to head to the town of Kalat and finally find out what this world really is. Relaxing with the Chibis, Zero thoughtfully recalled how much time he had already spent in this world. Grandfather beams with pride and boasts about the food he cooked with his own hands. But Zero is not easily impressed. He called the dish a complete botch. Grandfather loses his head over the insult, and the Chibis just enjoy the chaos. Grams no longer tolerates the chatter and directly asks what Zero really wants. He noticed that Zero was alone and immediately asked where the red-haired lady had gone. Zero explains that he left her in the capital, and Grandfather just laughs and asks, "So you had a fight with your wife?" A fight? Our guy instantly explodes and shouts at the top of his voice, "She is not my wife." Grandfather admits that when he first approached the window, he thought Zero was a ghost. No, because in this world Zero has few friends, so he needs information from the old man. Grandfather agreed to help, so Zero immediately asks if he knows anything about the black stone in the shape of an egg. Grandfather knows nothing about that stone, so Zero calls the Spirit Liberation Squad. It turned out that Grandfather knows them like the back of his hand. They are his regular clients who buy equipment from him. Zero is shocked he can't believe the old man would sell to them, such a dangerous group. Grandfather shrugged and said, "They are just people who want to free the spirits, aren't they?" And this completely threw Zero off balance because it contradicts everything he had heard. Grandfather dropped a simple truth: a weapon is as dangerous as the one who holds it. He sharply reminds Zero he also gave him a weapon, so he has no right to judge. Grandfather doesn't care about their ideals, but he believes that people can survive perfectly well without spirits. Zero suddenly realizes he feels the same because he is from a world without any magic. Zero's brain seems to freeze as he tries to figure out who the real villains are here. Grandfather calls him a weirdo because he really thinks so seriously about the world's problems. He tells Zero, put aside prejudice and decide for yourself when you see the truth. Zero takes the advice to heart and understands. Just sitting still, he will understand nothing. Zero says thank you Urograms, and for this he was shouted at because the old man is called Uruji. When Zero asked about the great spirits, the grandfather sincerely admitted that he was only interested in blacksmithing. Our guy calls him a useless unit and prepares to return to the forest. He waves goodbye to the old man, feeling much more focused on his mission. Zero decides to head to his forest base to farm information and prepare for strikes on other villages later. From now on, he decisively decided to make decisions himself. As soon as he reaches his cave, he exclaims, "Home, sweet home," in a joyful Chibai voice. The fresh air seems to fill him with strength. Suddenly, the Chibis felt that something was wrong on their territory. Zero asked them to go ahead, expecting only some pathetic crowd. Instead, he runs straight into a huge bearded man who looks like a mountain. The stranger says that he is the only one here who stands out. Zero doesn't even hesitate. He is sure that this guy is a scoundrel who has targeted the Chibai. He begins to crush the old man with a merciless barrage of blows. The Chibai panic and beg him to please stop in Ghana. Zero simply tells that freaky bastard, "Shut up," and without stopping continues swinging. The bearded man shouts that he is actually the great spirit of the earth. Zero finally freezes, watching as he completely distorts his face. Even the mighty spirit sweats with fear, because Zero is a real menace. Zero just lashes out at this hairy old man who calls himself the great spirit of the earth. This fat old fool begs for mercy, and Zero demands proof that he is not some perverted stalker. The old man's entire proof is simply that he says he looks exactly like those cute Chibai swirling around. Zero does not buy this RNG-level logic for a moment. He begins twisting the old man with a series of blows, until even the Chibai beg him to calm down. Calming down, Zero gives the old man one last chance to explain himself so he won't get more hits. He demands real proof that this weirdo is a higher-ranking spirit. The old man tries to show who is boss here, but Zero immediately points out a clear hole in his logic. People supposedly cannot enter this forest, yet Zero is standing right here. Everything becomes much more terrifying when the old man suddenly utters the name Zero. Zero immediately notices a stalker of the highest level in him, but Chibai seems to trust him, and only this stops Zero from erasing him. The old man explains that Zero's ability to see spirits is not just some broken skill of that god in glasses. It turns out this ability works only if your basic stats already have a true nature that spirits love. So our guy was a natural magnet for these little creatures, even before he was dragged into the ice sky. To make everything even stranger, the old man starts reading Zero's thoughts, and it's just disgusting. Zero grits his teeth, pushes away the awkwardness, and asks what this great spirit really wants from him. Zero recalls the Black Cliffs and the Spirit Liberation Squad and suddenly realizes this is clearly beyond his abilities. He decided from the very beginning to ask the right questions. He reaches for the simplest one: what are spirits? The old man frankly says, spirits are the source of all mana in this world. Without them, the magical system simply weakens to zero. If the spirits disappear, the mana will instantly evaporate, the reserve will drop to zero, and no one will be able to use magic anymore. And then shock, mana in this world is in chaos, Hana. Zero demands to know why the mana is so glitchy, and the old man just shrugs and says, "Go solve this mystery yourself and quickly." He told Zero that he must track down 3 other great spirits, fire, wind, and water, to uncover the truth about the black stone. Then the old man raises a finger, as if pointing to one more, the last secret. This secret is the truth about who you really are, Hana. Our guy stands stunned, suddenly realizing that he doesn't really know what he truly is. The old man says that Zero is not like all other people, and must find his own answer. However, before the old man disappears, he extends his hand and touches Zero's legendary iron pipe. Zero is confused, a strange aura envelops his weapon. It seems the old man just upgraded his equipment to legendary level. He says that the other great spirits are scattered across the northwestern lands and in the south. When Zero gathers his strength, he must offer it on the altar to save Chibai. Zero shouts at him to return, but the old man only smiles and disappears. He leaves, saying goodbye to Zero for the last time and eagerly awaits their next meeting. Zero sits and thinks about that boy with glasses. What secret could he be hiding? Now our boy faces a huge task to save his little friends. After a long session of devising strategies, he realizes that the quest journal is still almost empty. Our boy decides that the only way forward is to set out in search of the great spirits. He figured that moving south is the fastest way to pass this level. Suddenly, a wild princess appears, screaming for help. This is Gusuku, and she is chased by a pack of real colossi. Zero is not even impressed. He is annoyed that she is running from such weak mobs. She says she burned 10 of them, but her mana reserves are completely depleted. Zero strictly tells her to stop pretending to be cute. This is not an anime about everyday life. He decides to carry the team on his own and simply beat the life out of himself. Gas Oku calls him a complete musclehead without a brain when he rushes into attack. Zero does not worry about the metagame. He just grabs a heavy weapon and starts swinging it. He orders the goblins not to take their eyes off him while he is killing them. He looks just like a real villain when he mocks those who survived. He is annoyed that Gyusuku does not give any useful or supportive buffs at all. The rest of the goblins understand that they are facing a raid boss, and cold sweat breaks out on them. They literally trembled, and Zero just looked at them, intimidating them with his gaze. He scares them with a creepy grimace and says he is joking, but the fear is real. Finally, he gives the command, Gyusuku, finish the job. She unleashes a massive fire spell on the rest of the group, hitting a large area. Zero looks at the crispy remains and finally understands the fight is over. For now, it's clean here, but the real headache is just beginning. Yusuk beams with a smile, believing that their teamwork was simply top-notch. Zero sharply brings her back to reality and demands to know why she is here. He cuts her off sharply, go away, because he wants to make this journey alone and as quickly as possible. She says that everything is calculated and no Zero is a simple person. Zero, with a tremble in his voice, asks if she is even allowed to leave the place of appearance. She lies without blinking, saying that the king gave her the green light to follow him. She pressed close to his face and shouted that her only plan is to follow Zero-san. Even after being pushed away, she stubbornly clung to him as if she had become his permanent companion in the squad. Finally, Zero gave in and told her that they are heading south to the Great Spirit of Fire. He says that spirit is just some depraved, hairy old man. She persistently asked for the exact coordinates of the spirit's base. Suddenly, Zero realized that he hadn't read the task markers at all and had no idea where to go. He tries to guess what it is in the forest, but she sharply points out, to the south only volcanoes and minerals. He was completely burned. Confidence was without any hesitation, but there was no real plan at all. He feels the pressure rising and immediately starts looking for any hidden clues. He pulls out the map and asks the Chibai spirits for help. Then the Chibis truly react to the map and excitedly start pointing to different places. They point to one specific place, and Zero instantly loses his calm. It is the Fuse volcano, a high-level zone, and it is too dangerous for them there. But Zero ignores the sharp jump in difficulty and tells her to trust the Chabis while they head to the volcano. How much longer will you keep nagging? Zero-san shouts he is already tired of these constant quarrels. He tells Gyusuku, instead of crying, use that energy to prepare for the Fuse volcano. Gasako is sweating because walking such a distance on foot is a complete nightmare for her. Zero-san coldly notes, no sensible coachman will drive up to the forbidden zone. Our guy decides without hesitation to go there on foot alone, while Gusaku returns to the castle to fetch the carriage. Gusaku realizes that she is about to be left behind, and suddenly everything in her head freezes like a terrible lag. She instantly steps back and says that the carriage is under repair just to stay close to his side. She puts on a laugh to hide the traces, but Zero-san feels that something is clearly wrong with the atmosphere. A strange rustle in the trees instantly alerts them both. Something huge is approaching. Both froze, feeling the tension in the air suddenly rise to a dangerous level. Suddenly, a giant flower monster burst out of the dense foliage. Zero-san froze at how damn huge this plant was. Yusuko recognizes it as a dead flower, a monster that usually feeds only on animal corpses. But this thing was clearly angry at them and started relentlessly chasing them. Yusuko suggests burning it, but Zero-san hesitates to start a fire in the forest. He decides that they should just run away, they haven't been directly attacked yet. Usaku, all in a haze of love, imagines their escape to secretly get married while they flee the scene together. Liana suddenly sharply grabs Zero-san's leg without any warning. He is jerked upwards abruptly, he dangles like bait, and the monster looms over him. He curses this plant trying to break free, but his blunt weapon is practically useless against these vines. He realizes he won't be able to shake it off and won't reach the main forces to counterattack. The plant opens its maw, there are nightmarish teeth dripping with thick slime. Zero-san suddenly realizes he's about to be eaten and shouts to Gyusuku, "Blow this thing away with your magic." She releases a huge explosion, but the high IQ plant uses Zero-san as a shield and takes the hit itself. But Gyusuku screamed in horror, convinced she just erased her partner. She decides she has no other choice, she must follow her husband into the afterlife. But before that, she directs her pure rage to burn the enemy to ashes. Suddenly, a huge firestorm rises, but Zero-san's voice miraculously cuts through the chaos. Gyusuku still pretends to be a tragic heroine, promising to join him in the afterlife soon. And Zero-san pulls her out of that state, complaining that his whole body hurts badly. He thanks her because he believes she held back and restrained all her power to save him. Yusuko, with an empty gaze, admits that she does not remember being lenient at all. She tries to brush it off, saying she was just focused on killing the monster. She gives him a mischievous smile as the tension from the battle finally subsides. Zero-san unexpectedly shows rare gratitude and says, "Thank you for saving me." Yusuko beamed with happiness when she was noticed, and Zero-san praises his armor, saying it was what saved him during friendly fire. He glances at his stats and battered gear and realizes how close he was to game over. He understands that from now on they will have to work much more carefully as a team. Zero-san decides that his dumb weapon is a complete failure in such skirmishes. He decides that he needs the Nada knife to easily cut through these plant mobs. They decide to visit the nearest town to rest and prepare their gear before the real trial on the volcano begins. Zero is simply melting from the heat, while the fire spirits are wildly partying. Grace explains that this entire region is under the influence of the fused volcano, and the south has turned into a lush tropical biome. Due to the temperature, the area literally teems with stone and fire chibis. Our guy doesn't waste time, he instantly signs a new contract with one of the little ones. He begins to wonder, is there really a limit to the size of his company because he just keeps gathering them? Grace noted, if Zero is a fire mage, this heat shouldn't even come close to affecting his HP scale. Although he is sweating profusely, Zero says it's just male pride and stubbornly refuses to admit that it's hard for him. Grace shares some of her water and sighs that her mana efficiency is terrible, because she is using an attribute that is not her main specialization. They have been walking this path for 10 days straight. Now Grace survives only thanks to some special medicine against spirits, which Zero got for her. Zero gently strokes his chibai on the head when they finally approach the place they are heading to. They arrive at the mining town of Fura, a place where people go to get rich quickly or to be cheated. Grace considers the locals scary, but after a moment jokes that they are nothing compared to what Aura Zero radiates. All our guy wants is to find a decent inn and finally eat properly after that long journey. But RNG is definitely against them. Today they are immediately intercepted. It turns out Amari's found them, and Grace looks as if a world boss appeared right in front of her. Zero understands. Amari's is boiling with rage because Grace played like a pro and secretly left the castle without permission. He tries to brush it off with light jokes, but Amari's is not in the mood for conversation. She draws a blade and looks as if ready to erase the Zero save right here and now. She mockingly calls him a fool because he thought he could get away with it unpunished. Suddenly, a powerful explosion shook the area, and Grace has to drag Zero away from the blast zone. They dashed away, saving their lives, while Zero shouts, demanding to know what trouble he has been dragged into. Amari's yells at them, convinced that it was Zero who provoked this magical attack. She simply lost her temper because someone dared to use magic within the city limits. Zero shouts back, "It wasn't me, I don't even know how to cast spells." Just when it seemed all was lost, a carriage slowly rounds the corner. At the wheel is Lily. She calls to Grace and Zero, "Get in quickly before they catch you." Lily wonders why Zero is even here, but sharply tells them to move him because Amari's is closing the distance. Zero barely clung to the back of the carriage as it started moving. Amari's remains in the dust, shouting, "I'll kill you," as they escape. Chibai only watch as chaos unfolds around them while the carriage speeds away. Grace sternly tells Zero to step back, she will cover the rear. A huge magical wall rises to block the pursuit, and the whole scene seems to turn into a high-stakes risky robbery. They have only 30 minutes to break out. They burst through the southern gate and Zero realizes they officially look like a bunch of terrorists. Finally, they enter the cave to hide from the search party. Lily immediately starts scolding Zero, calls him a stinky bug, and scolds Grace for leaving her. The atmosphere becomes incredibly tense as they prepare for a major lore reveal. Lily drops the most powerful bomb. She looks Zero in the eyes and says, "You are suspected of attempting to overthrow the royal family." Zero froze, stunned by this accusation. Our guy's reputation was completely trampled overnight. He was branded an elite criminal. Zero just loses his mind upon learning he was accused of treason. Yusaku just giggles in the background, while our guy is in full hysteria over the misunderstanding. He finally realizes that it was she who dragged him into this mess from the very beginning. A hard day when even your summons troll you and label you a criminal. Lily drops a bombshell. Princess Amari's is hunting him right now. Zero thinks he can just talk his way out as if he doesn't care at all. The girls look at him as if he has completely lost his mind. And Lily explains that these accusations are just a cover to catch him. This time Grace finally decides to tell the whole truth why she ran away from the castle. She explains this is exactly why she had to flee. It turns out that influential players in the capital already know that Zero sees Chibai. They didn't come to talk, they are here to catch him and use his power. It seems Amari's is just muscle, too simple to be aware of this plan. Grace tried to warn her sister, but the villainess just rushed outside without even listening. Zero wonders how he himself slipped up and gave away his secret. Lily coldly shoved the truth in his face. He constantly talks to the air right in front of people. The Spirit Liberation Army has effectively infiltrated the very top of the server. It's about the commander and the minister, they are pulling the strings. Zero doesn't remember these NPCs at all. But as soon as they describe the face of the gorilla and the minister with a gangster look, everything finally falls into place. He is curious about the exact plan those old men have devised. The villains greedily hunt for colossal power, which only contracts with several spirits can grant. Zero looks at his Chibai army and realizes that he is effectively a walking cheat code. He stops endlessly scrolling the feed and understands that both girls were just trying to save him. Gyusuku begins to cry. She never thought he would be accused of betrayal. Zero gently stroked her head so she would understand it was not her fault. Lily begins to feel like a useless supporting heroine. Grace will not tolerate this and pulls her into a hug. Grace tells Lily, drop that maid's mask and just be yourself. Now they are one team and ranks no longer matter. As the sun sets behind the mountain, Lily asks for a hint for the next move. Zero thinks about letting Amari's catch him because she is a tough fool who will protect him. The girls immediately categorically rejected this deadly mission. Zero knows he cannot allow his friends to be banned because of him. He looks intently at the giant volcano in the distance. He decides the next quest is a speedrun straight into the fuse volcano. This is a forbidden zone, knights wouldn't even dare to attract the enemy's attention there. Lily thinks he is a complete idiot for going into such a high-level zone. But not a hint of a smile at the end of the dungeon awaits a great fire spirit. The squad encounters an impassable wall at the foot of the fuse volcano. It is a complete forbidden zone. Zero understands. Their carriage has zero traction on the off-road, so they will have to leave it right here. There is almost no grass left, it's so hot here, as if everything around has turned into a real furnace. The carriage turns back, and our guy is already drenched in sweat from passive heat damage. Lily is like a living air conditioner. Her ice magic keeps her always cool. Zero tries to catch some of that refreshing breeze, but behaves completely creepily. Kasuku dies of embarrassment, and Zero just wants to survive this unbearable heat. He decides the plan is simple, to rush straight to the volcano's summit. Lily can't stand his nonsense and quickly scolds him for being a larva. But suddenly Chibai caught some strange signal in the air. They point to a specific place, as if they found a hidden quest marker. The girls think that Zero has finally lost his mind because he is looking at a real cliff. He pretends as if the spirits themselves are whispering secrets to him. They didn't even have time to say a word, he was already climbing the cliff like a real pro. Finally, he reaches the summit. He looks like he has only 1 HP left. The squad surveys the summit, but around only a desolate wasteland. Lily says with irony that it's complete emptiness, no prey in sight. Suddenly the whole map trembled as if a huge boss was about to appear. Under their feet the ground suddenly cracked and opened, revealing a huge chasm. Zero tries to draw the enemy's attention to himself and shouts to the girls, "Run." But it's already too late. The entire platform collapses into the abyss. They fall into free fall and debris rains around them. Zero woke up feeling as if he had just been pinned down by a top-level raid boss. For a moment, he was overwhelmed with nostalgia as he remembered how he first met his Chibai companions. He sharply comes to his senses and checks the spirits. They look completely depressed. He encourages them, "Don't worry, this fall is just a bad RNG." He glanced aside and saw Gasuku and Lilithy looked as if they had just been deleted. Finally, they wake up, but Lily freezes in horror when she sees blood on her hands. Yusuko is confused. Despite the fall, she felt absolutely nothing. It's a real miracle that after falling from such a height, not all of them became ghosts. It turned out the Chibis played like pro healers. They gave medicine so they would stay alive. Suddenly, a wave of depression overwhelmed Basuku. She is actually touched because she cannot see the spirits herself to thank them. Lily ruins the moment again by calling Zero a larva because they are stuck in a pit. Suddenly, they realize they are trapped inside a volcano and there is no way to climb out. Zero catches a faint light at the end of the tunnel. They walk along the path and suddenly discover a giant cave hidden deep underground. Gusko is in shock. The temperature here is so high that even her fire resistance does not hold up. Zero does not notice the heat. He feels a huge presence lurking in the shade. He steps forward and sternly demands that the great spirit of fire appear. There is a deathly silence in the room, and Zero looks like a real clown in front of the girls. He sharply told them to shut up, trying to preserve at least a bit of his dignity. Suddenly, the entire cave exploded with a terrible aura. Zero realizes he really pulled the boss onto himself, and it is already preparing to strike. From the depths of the flames rises a huge obsidian dragon. This is the real machine they were looking for, and it looks like it is ready to sweep away the entire team. The fight with the boss of the century has just arrived, and it is a huge dragon that responded to Zero's call. The girls instantly broke out in sweat and tried to escape. This real machine lets out such a roar that any newbie would immediately delete the game. Zero did not even flinch, shouting to check if this monster was really the great spirit of fire. His team thinks he has gone mad because he tried to talk to the raid boss. The dragon really responds, and in its voice there is an insult as if a mere human dared to step into its territory. It simply skips the dialogue and immediately shows the game over screen. Lily refuses to be cannon fodder and resolutely stands to defend the squad. Grace prepares the most powerful ice magic, hoping to at least slightly reduce the fire damage rushing towards them. The blow was insane. Everyone was thrown back as if they had stepped on a mine. Zero tries to check his group, but Gyusuku comes under fire. A powerful explosion shook the vicinity as the dragon's force hit directly. The look on her face says that all this is a complete failure. Zero accelerates to the limit because he knows his partner is about to be deleted. Even having fire resistance, taking that explosion head-on is a death sentence. The saw slowly settles over the place that looks as if the entire group was wiped off the face of the earth. Our guy desperately reaches out to save her before her life gauge drops to 0. The maid screamed at the top of her lungs, calling them because she feared the worst had already happened. I'm sure not a single bone will remain of that person, the narrator warns. Miraculously, Zero finds Gyusuku alive and tightly holds her after everything that happened. He is completely confused. He doesn't understand why he doesn't have a single scratch. Even the dragon is stunned and insists on knowing why his own power protects the human. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a huge wave of tiny spirits appears, rushing to help our guy. These chibai are everywhere. They formed a real wall of defense around them. Finally, Zero understood everything. These little guys are true heroes. Suddenly, a new contender appeared and without hesitation, loudly ordered the dragon to retreat immediately. Here he is, the great spirit of fire himself, in incredibly powerful armor. The dragon does not believe its eyes. A spirit of the highest rank has taken the side of a human. The spirit in armor says to the dragon, "Look more closely who Zero really is." The dragon stares for a long time and finally catches the hidden potential of the main hero. It decides to fulfill the request and leaves this place without unnecessary scenes. The huge monster took off and flew away, leaving the group at least for a moment in peace. The girls finally stop panicking when the great spirit of fire solemnly introduces itself. Zero is shocked. Ordinary people should not see a creature of such a level. He has one question in his head. Does this mean that now everyone sees other lustful spirits he deals with? Putting jokes aside, Zero turns and sincerely thanks the tiny spirits for catching him. But one of the chibai starts glowing with a strange, dim light. It tells Zero there is something he needs to know before it disappears. The little man disappears, leaving behind a mysterious black stone. Zero grabs the object and curiously wonders what kind of prey he has just obtained. The girls are also completely confused. Where did this stone come from? The fire spirit explains that this stone is a spirit that has fallen into a deep sleep. Spirits are pure magic, and usually they only allow users to borrow it. It squeezed every last drop from the battery, just so Zero would not be crushed by the dragon. The realization that the little one sacrificed himself to save them painfully hits the whole team. The mood becomes oppressive as the fire spirit prepares to release more. He asks Zero a question that turns the whole game upside down. What is the goal of the Spirit Liberation Army? He demands resolutely as the tension reaches its peak. The great fire spirit demands to know Zero's true intentions, but our guy is not in the mood to talk at all. He cannot stop thinking about the chibai who exhausted his mana and turned into a cold black stone. He clearly makes it known that the goals of the Spirit Liberation Army mean nothing to him at all. Even when the spirit asks why they should let the chibai go free, Zero just shrugs and says it's none of his business. The spirit begins to fade and extinguish, leaving Zero alone with his thoughts. He grips his weapon and realizes there are far more questions than answers. Before finally dissolving into the air, the spirit gave him a new task: to head west, meet the great wind spirit, and find out who he really is. The time has come, the spirit warns, erasing itself from this place. Zero is furious because that huge spirit just babbled and ran away without explaining anything about the backstory. Grace tries to check on him, but he is in a bad mood today. He looks at the exhausted spirit in his hand and doesn't understand why anyone would sacrifice themselves for someone like him. He was struck to the bone. The little one spent every drop of his strength just to protect him. He feels like complete trash for letting this happen. But the other chibis run up, hug him, and whisper that he is not alone. Zero realizes that sitting and being sad won't change his luck. At that very moment, he swears that no chibai will ever turn into a black stone again. He begins to piece together the puzzle of the mystery, and cannot get rid of the thought that these stones are connected to those disturbances in the world's magic. The lack of information slowly drives him mad. He vents his anger by simply breaking the neighboring stone in half. He looks like a real maniac. Blood runs down his face, and the girls are gripped by complete panic. Zero decides that he will immediately rush west, trying to do it as quickly as possible. But before they could set off, Amari's with her knights appeared and blocked the way. She has that intimidating aura of a commander, and she demands to know what the Great Fire Spirit told them. Zero does not back down and tells her directly that next they will meet the Wind Spirit. Amaris breaks out in a sweat, trying to get to the truth why the spirits are turning to stone. Zero sharply replies that he is just as clueless as she is, and is simply doing what he can. Grace finally intervenes. She becomes the bridge that connects them. She drops a real bomb. Spirits do not feed on people, they lend their magic to people until they themselves die. The Zero process is a bitter truth. The whole system is set against Chibis. He places his hand on Grace's head to calm her down. He tells Amaris directly that he doesn't care about the rumors or being called a kidnapper. He radiates a terrifying pressure that seems to promise to blow away anyone who tries to stop him. Amaris just laughed and it became clear. A fresh bounty was placed on his head. Suddenly an epiphany flashed in Grace. Suddenly she realizes her sister is actually looking for an excuse to leave with her. Amara blushed and claims she can help with many tasks if she joins the team. The knights cannot believe that their stocky commander behaves so sweetly. Grace teases her sister, reminding her that she just led a squad to arrest them. She makes it clear she travels with Zero not because she is a hostage, but because she wants to. Grace solemnly invites her sister to join their journey. Amari switches to the mode of a loving, caring sister and vows to protect Grace to the ends of the earth. Lily still considers herself a real gorilla, but surprisingly having such a big guy on the team will definitely help against the Knightly Order. When the sun begins to set, the group finds a way out of this place. Amara sends her knights back to the castle to go her own way together with the squad. Zero looks at the horizon and knows the real trial is just beginning. Their path is already determined. They head west to meet the Spirit of the Wind and save Chibis. The deputy captain told how everything went awry in the castle when the group disappeared. It turned out Amaris was framed. She was unfairly accused of treason, which is why her elite squad mobilized so quickly. Zero is truly impressed by their dedication. He sees that these soldiers are real reliable guys. But everything instantly twists when they declare that they are actually the official fan club of Amaris. They swear to follow her even when she behaves like a real pumped-up fool. And then a real twist, they actually want her to mock them. Zero breaks out in sweat when he realizes he is surrounded by a huge club of perverts. The warriors prepare to return to the castle to draw the enemy's attention to themselves and protect the king. They entrust Amari's Zero with security. He agrees with a confident raised thumb, and Amari's explodes, proudly declaring that she will protect herself and calls him a worm. The team decides that their next main quest target is in the west, and Gyusuku adds that supposedly the Great Spirit of the Wind lives exactly in that direction. The spirits pointed to a suspicious structure on the map that looked like a real dungeon, and Grace said there are rumors supposedly a god lives in the western desert. She confirms it is the Great Wind God himself, the very one they need to find, and Zero goes crazy because the hidden building is so incredibly obvious. He cannot believe how much Gyusuku is acting like a fool because of that map. Our guy understands that stupidity has no limits, but they still have to move forward. They officially started searching for that Great Wind God. Grace suggests first returning to the city to finally get a good rest. Zero is stunned. He is ready to rush through the next part of the journey as fast as possible. The soldier reminds them that there is now a huge reward on Zero's head. And on top of that, the princess previously just ground the city to dust. The soldiers suggest dropping by the nearby onsen to restore strength and stats. The girls are completely shocked by the very idea of a hot spring, and Zero and his pack of spirits cannot believe that such a hidden gem turned out to be so close. Finally, the group finished the long-awaited rest under the moonlight. Zero is fully recharged and upbeat, ready to dive back into the work whirlpool. Although he is already ready to move, the rest of the squad looks completely drained from stress. Amaris is already whining that she needs a warm bed and proper food. Zero does not give reverse gear and reminds the villain that he and Lily carry all the hard work in the kitchen. He starts to harass her, but Grace immediately intervenes to protect her lady from the bug. The maid finally tamed the quarrels, driving the girls into the carriage and sending Zero to divert the patrol's attention. Zero sharply reminds everyone, this is not a trip for fuel, we are literally fugitives accused of treason. He sets out to inspect the surroundings, but it is clear that he is boiling with rage because he was made a runner boy. Walking, he tries to digest the crazy flow of lore they have been bombarded with lately. The goal is simple: to meet the Great Spirit of the Wind and finally understand who he really is. Suddenly, Zero feels that someone is lurking in the shadows and sharply turns around. Suddenly, an old woman seems to have teleported right behind his back, and he had a powerful heart attack. But she surprisingly is completely calm, invites him to sit and talk a little. In Zero's head, alarm bells instantly rang as soon as she dropped his name, as if it was known to everyone. He tensely tries to recall her face, wondering if she is just a random saleswoman he once saw. Grandmother laughed, instantly reading his thoughts, and told him to think deeper about why she was here. She warns him, if he becomes more cautious, maybe that's how he can recognize a true top player when he sees one. Zero smiles smugly. He knows that only one type of NPC is capable of such hacks. The two froze in tension. Our guy finally understood everything. "Am I right, Great Spirit of the Wind?" he asked, finally calling her. She confirms his guess with a smile and teases him, saying, "Look, you really are clever enough to figure this out." Zero asks confusedly why she is walking around instead of setting up camp near her temple. She says that technically she is still in the temple, and this just makes Zero's brain freeze. He can't comprehend how she manages this trick, being in two places at once. He became insanely angry at the mysterious grandmother. She is talking in circles again, like all the other great spirits. He insists on knowing if something happened at her native base. She gives him an almost correct guess, and this only makes him even more upset. And then she drops a bombshell. The Spirit Liberation Army has already occupied the great temple of the Wind God. It seems she is the easiest to track, so they made her their main target. Zero thinks they want to free the spirits, but in reality, something much more suspicious is behind it. The enemy is going to drop a massive barrier to completely seal off the temple. This will trap the spirits inside and not let anyone else in. Zero considers this a real headache and struggles to understand the logic of this move. He can't get rid of the thought, are they just trying to completely separate people from the spirits? If they do that, they will cut themselves off from the spirits, and that makes no sense at all. Grandmother sharply turned around and asked Zero what he was really doing during his journey. He tells her they were just having fun eating and traveling together like an ordinary group. She impresses him with a deep thought and warns, "Don't consider someone a good person just because you were told so." Zero suddenly realizes she wants him to stop being a sheep and finally start thinking with his own head. He barely managed to ask anything more when the grandmother began to dissolve into a cloud of smoke. She leaves him with a final warning about the barrier and insists, "Hurry to the temple." Zero remains standing alone, irritated by this mysterious exit. Despite his confusion, he knows he must rush to the temple to see what is really happening. Imagine this, the Great Spirit of the Wind turned out to be the same strange old woman we saw earlier. The Spirit Liberation Army is busy setting up a barrier near the Wind Sanctuary, so the group has to bypass the village and immediately rush into the thick of the battle. Grace is still stuck on the thought that Zero sees spirits that no one else can see. She decides that it is simply because he is a person from another world. But Zero is not entirely sure that this is the only reason. He has a lot of questions about his power, and he needs to find the old woman's spirit to learn the truth. Finally, they reach the sanctuary and see the same small enemies they fought earlier. The girls are ready to rush to the entrance, but Zero raises his hand and they freeze. He is afraid that if they use their most powerful magic, they will accidentally destroy the sanctuary. They hadn't even argued about the plan yet when the cultists noticed them and demanded, "Who's there?" Zero flared up and reproached the girls they were making so much noise that they lost all the element of surprise. He is fervently trying to convince them that negotiations should always be the first choice. He takes a step forward, smiles friendly, and tells the girls to watch how he handles this. Zero looks like a hardened hooligan, so his attempts to be friendly look like a real nightmare. The soldiers start sweating from fear, call him the devil, and immediately attack. Zero irritably takes them down in an instant, grumbling that he just wanted to talk. He is genuinely offended that they called an ordinary person like him a demon. In just a few seconds, the guards were tied up and beaten into silence. Lara calls him a complete scoundrel for making such a terrible grimace to lure the enemy and force him to reveal himself. Grace thinks it's just Zero acting in his own way, but they quickly realize that even more enemies await them at the sanctuary. The rest of the cultists began chanting powerful earth magic. The earth starts to rumble and shift as the spell takes shape. A huge golem, a true giant, rises from beneath the ground. Grace is shocked these guys really managed to summon it at such a high cost. Zero is unimpressed and thinks that giant pile of stones looks so silly that he can just run past it. Grace warns him that the golem has no delay and will move much faster than he can imagine. She was right, the monster lunges forward with terrifying speed. And Grace and Lara flew into the zone, covering the monster with a barrage of magic and sword strikes. They managed to smash the golem's body to pieces. Zero thinks the fight is over, but Grace sternly tells the idiot to stay alert. The stones underfoot suddenly begin to glow and tremble. As long as there is earth underfoot to draw from, this thing endlessly regenerates health. Zero in fury calls such regeneration a complete deception. The golem did not wait for him to stop complaining and rushed at him with a heavy blow. Zero barely dodges the strike, but the dust cloud suffocates, breathing becomes difficult. The golem caught him by surprise and sent him flying with one precise hit. Zero sweated. He understands that his usual physical attacks have no effect on that stone body. He himself does not know how to cast spells, so he is stuck in a difficult situation. He looks past the monster and notices a wizard standing near the shrine. He realizes that if he can get rid of the mages, the golem will likely crumble. The problem is that the golem is a huge guardian blocking any path to the rear. Zero finally understands, to win he will have to resort to magic. He smiled sinisterly, deciding to make a risky move. He tells the lady spirit to wait because now he is going to use everything he has. Amaku's sweat flows like a river. This golem is a true giant. He needs leniency to buy enough time and craft a counterstrap. She knows it's a reckless risk, but she believes in our guy. She prepares the blade, looking like a real beast before rushing into the thick of the battle. She doesn't even blink, looking straight into the giant's eyes. Grace charges in herself, while the others stand and watch as she takes all the enemy's attention. Amaku turned to Gyusuku and asked, "Can I crank up the heat of my fire magic to the maximum?" He looks at Lily and sternly demands that she prepare a huge block of ice. Lily is confused but says she can manage if someone stops the monster's movement. He doesn't have time to explain all the lore, so they can only trust the process. Grace jumped back, complaining that golem regeneration is pure pay-to-win garbage. Amaku tells her to lure the monster to the mages and break its leg. She smiles defiantly. For a top-level player, this is just a walk in the park. He understands that those strange ones in robes are using the golem as a living shield to protect themselves. Grace thinks they are running away, but Amaku has a much more sinister plan in mind. They are not retreating, they are about to remove this thing from the server. They split up to attack the monster from both sides. The wizards begin to panic, realizing that their squad is surrounded. Grace loudly shouts to Amaku, "Get ready to finish this." She delivered a powerful blow, completely bending the golem's leg. Now it's the mage's turn to feel the pressure. Gyusuku allows Lucy to unleash such a stream of fire that even a dragon would envy. The heat is so unbearable that Amaku's jacket seems useless. Lily steps out next, ready to give the cold shoulder. She throws a piece of ice, huge as a glacier, directly into the molten lava. As soon as the ice touches the heat, everything instantly ignites. The thermal shock creates a powerful reaction. This causes a huge explosion that shakes the entire area. A huge cloud of steam and debris covers the battlefield. The girls cough through the smoke, unsure if they had really managed to clear the stage. Something is still rattling inside that huge crater. One of the mages is still clinging to life, barely breathing, and looks like he is about to explode with rage and leave. He screams that he will never forgive them. Thai ruined his plan. Amaku simply indifferently steps on his head to end the dialogue with one move. When the pilot fainted, the golem finally crumbled to dust. The path to the temple is finally free of minor enemies. Lily asks how he could have known that the explosion would happen, and he simply admits he only guessed. The squad marches towards the entrance of the dark temple. Amaku warns everyone, be on guard, the boss might still be inside. The little spirits followed behind, trying their best to stay calm. Suddenly, Amaku crashes into something and almost breaks his nose. It turns out there is a hidden barrier in front of them blocking their way. They are stuck outside, standing and looking at the invisible wall, ruining their speedrun. As soon as Zero tries to follow the group to the shrine of the wind god, he literally crashes into the invisible wall. The girls realize with horror, this powerful top-level barrier was created specifically so that neither humans nor spirits can pass through. Since they can't just break in, the team decides to split up and look for another entrance. Our guy is ready to set up camp and spend the night under the open sky, but the Chibis start whining and insist on going inside immediately. Zero understood that he couldn't just ignore his little companions, so he puts the Chibis first and decides to sneak through the entrance door. He slowly pushes aside the heavy doors of the sanctuary, gathering strength and preparing for any crowd of small enemies that might be waiting on the other side. Instead of the expected boss fight, he suddenly encounters a suspicious figure in a hood standing next to the great spirit of the wind. The boy in the hood grumbles irritably that he should have put a stronger barrier on the gates to keep people out. He turns around with a creepy glossy smile that screams the energy of a final boss and clutches his chest. He immediately calls our boy a Zero and looks as if he is about to explode with pure excitement. The boy introduces himself as Koya from the Spirit Liberation Army and tries to act as if they are completely on the same side. Zero does not fall for this friendly show for a moment and accuses him he is the one who announced the huge bounty on his head. Koya tries to present it as a council mistake, but Zero immediately senses this boy is completely opposite to him. Koya admits that he actually came here to make a contract with the Great Spirit of the Wind, but the old lady refused him. Great spirits do not play by human rules. Despite the spirit rejecting him, he boldly asks Zero to join his organization. Zero sharply and categorically said no, and kicked him out. He only wants to talk to the old lady here. Koya's smile froze on his face, but Zero notices that his eyes are dead cold, as if he is looking down on a bug. He says that the army actually seeks to free the spirits and tame them to save the world. In Zero's mind, alarm signals instantly sounded as soon as he heard the word control. He begins to lose his composure. The tension in the room is already at the limit and is about to explode. Koya explains that the world now is a complete glitch and chaos because the spirits are slowly disappearing from existence. He pulls out a glowing orb and explains that it is actually a spirit's egg or a magical stone. When the spirit burns out to the last drop of mana, it turns into this stone likeness and recovers over several years. Zero understands what this means. Spirits have a rebirth timer, but there is one big catch. People massively ripped out these stones, turning them into batteries for magical tools and thereby killing the spirits, giving them no chance to return. Black magical ore is especially dangerous. It fiercely sucks mana from anyone who touches it. Koya explains that as soon as these spirit eggs become transparent, people consider them valuable loot. They drain power for jewelry and equipment, and Zero realizes this is the slow extermination of the spirit race. At first, Zero thinks that the Spirit Liberation Army might actually be good if they are trying to stop this. But then Kuya reveals his distorted logic. They want to monopolize the spirits so that only the authorized can use them. Zero demands an answer. What does he really mean by control? Koya's plan is to create a world where only those who follow the army's rules can make contracts. He assures that this will stop the hunting of spirits and give the world a false peace. The Great Wind Spirit looks and says to Zero, "You and Kuya are actually two sides of the same coin because the spirits love you both." Zero is fiercely outraged by this comparison. He is repulsed by the idea and categorically refuses to participate in the plan to conquer the world. He understands Koya just wants to use the spirits as a cheat code to rule over humanity. Our guy finally explodes, shouting that Kuya is just a muscular idiot who wants to control the source of all magic so that everyone obeys him. After all, magic is an everyday necessity. Whoever controls the spirits essentially holds the whole world hostage. People would be forced to follow the army if they wanted the lights to stay on in their homes. Zero shouts that Koya doesn't care at all about what the Chibai really want. He hates Koya to the bone and makes it clear, imposing your beliefs on others is never the right move. Who bitterly realizes that his attempt to recruit has failed, so he decides to retreat without a fight for now. Zero sharply tells him, "Shut up," and vows to create a world where Chibis can live peacefully, not being anyone's tool. The Great Spirit of the Wind warns Zero, if the world supports Kuya's methods, everything will slide into that dark future. She hands him the next quest marker and says, "Head north there, the Great Spirit of Water will be waiting for you." She gives him a new legendary artifact and promises that he will soon realize how great his power is. His journey to the rest of the Great Spirits continues, and never before has so much been at stake. Zero knows sooner or later he will have to decide which future he will fight for. He presses his palm to his heart, resolutely seeking a way to save everyone and not become a tyrant. Zero is simply boiling with rage over the qualifying test he just passed. The old woman tells him that his next quest marker is far to the north. Suddenly a dull rumble echoed from the entrance, and Zero had to instantly jump back. The grandmother just stands and watches him walk away, wondering which path he will choose in this chaotic, fast-paced race of life. Zero finds his team near the entrance, and they just melt away. Amari's looks like she's about to unleash a boss-level combo on him for going solo. Even the girl healer has that creepy smile that means, your HP is about to drop to 0. They are completely tired of his solo queue antics and decided to teach him a lesson themselves. Realizing he's about to be defeated, our guy decides to use his last move. The girls have no idea what strategy he has in mind. He unleashes on them the legendary 90-degree bow, pleading for mercy. He considers himself mega smart, like he has 200 IQ, and is sure no one can stay mad long after a sincere apology. He quietly smiles to himself, thinking he outsmarted this encounter. MRSC saw through his act and mercilessly exposed him he's a fake. He tries to keep pretending while Chibis in the background are literally drenched in sweat. The little spirits are literally crying from the insane tension in the air. Finally, the priestess lets him go, but Zero looks as if his soul has completely left his body. Then they find a guy from the Liberation Army who is just wandering among the ruins. It turned out Amari's used her muscle logic and physically smashed the magical barrier. This guy couldn't even escape, his entire squad was lying unconscious. Zero is confused. Why couldn't the one considered a high-level mage simply dispel his barrier? And right then the villain dropped a huge lore bomb. He is exactly like Zero and doesn't know how to use magic at all. Just like our host, he is a truly rare player adored by spirits. This is the same guy Zero came across when he met the Great Wind Spirit. Amari's instantly draws her blade, ready to erase this guy from the server. Zero has to intervene and stop the execution before everything descends into chaos. The guy is completely terrified by the blonde's frightening aura. Zero promises that he will bury that guy someday, but says that now is not the time. The boy starts whining that he will be buried, and Zero just yells at him, "Focus." He asks that boy if he really seriously intends to save the spirits. Zero admits that he hates this guy to the bone and wants to smear him with honey and throw a swarm of wasps on him. Yet he cannot call that boy's goal complete trash. Zero firmly decided his next step is to head north to meet the great water spirit. He resolutely orders the boy to go with them and become their new guide. The girls go crazy over this choice during the selection. Zero just slaps that boy to tell him, "Calm down, damn it." He explains that although he is not a saint, he cares too much about the chibai to let them suffer. He directly accuses that boy he profits from the spirits. Zero grins ominously and calls that boy a little brat who needs to know his place. The team froze from Zero's sudden, commanding energy. Now that boy is officially bound as a hostage, and even he is not sure if he will keep his word. The girls agreed that they would simply get rid of him if he tried to do anything. Zero looks at the big picture and understands they are better off when they stick together. With a new friend nearby, the squad decisively sets off north. The girl simply melts because their prisoner constantly tries to disappear. Zero didn't even blink because his chibai is on watch around the clock. It turns out Lily rigged the entire perimeter with traps, and the sounds of that poor guy being beaten in the distance are like music to them. Currently, they were moving north to a place called Zili Pond to find a high-ranking water spirit. Finally, our boy finds a runner hanging upside down like a complete clown. Zero sharply threw at him, "Hey kid," but he cried so much over his life choices that he couldn't even respond. As soon as he was lowered, the boy somehow instantly changed clothes without any delay. He suddenly realizes that his old Liberation Army of Spirits uniform is now just a huge target on his back. The maid just wanted to bury the guy and be done with it, but Zero believes he might be useful for the group's composition. And Zero knows, if that guy tries to mess with them again, someone nearby will gladly wipe his save file. Amaku literally hovers in the background, radiating a deadly aura that would make any pro sweat with fear. To prove he is not just a minor mob, the guy covered the table with pancakes. It looked like a shot from a luxurious country house cutscene. The girls try and cannot help but admit the taste is truly top level. Zero smirks, knowing that his plan to delegate household chores to others works flawlessly. He even compliments the maid, and she instantly falls into complete panic. Now that he is officially tamed, that dude starts listing his useful skills. The ability to drive a carriage and cook exquisite dishes. Since Zero did not spend a single point on those life skills, he decides to keep him around. The guy starts acting as if he is some legendary unit of the prince, while the rest of the squad just looks at him with full disapproval. He frankly admits, in household chores he is a real titan, but in real combat completely helpless. Grace turns her attention back to the main goal and with a tremor in her voice, asks how the progress towards Zelipond is going. Amaku recalls how she once trained here, but she has bad news about the area. It turns out the path is blocked by a huge, disgusting swamp. Zero immediately lost his temper because walking through mud is the worst kind of debuff. The boy explains if they go around it will take months, so they will have to go right through that sticky mud. Grace tries to look strong, but it is clear that she is barely standing on her feet in this mud. That prince tries to avoid Ith, does not want to dirty his royal suit. Amaku is not going to accept this and, raising her whip, simply drags him into the mud. Even the maid looks at the swamp as if it would be better to face a world boss than to step there. The journey is pure torment. The environment drains strips of endurance from everyone. Grace is breathing hard but does not give up. She wants to prove that she has reached a new level. Suddenly, the servant notices a possible safe place ahead. Lily found a small patch of dry land where they can finally rest. The prince tries to be a gentleman and extends his hand to Grace, but she responds to him with a look of pure disgust. Instead, she turns to Zero and begs him to pull her out. Amaku fiercely threatens to twist that guy just for looking at her sister, while Zero just sighs and gets to work. He lifts Grace, but trudging through the swamp while carrying another player is basically playing on the hardest mode. But every step is a constant struggle, and Grace, moving all the time, does not make the task any easier. Just as they are about to reach the platform, Zero feels the ground shifting beneath him. The maid sharply shouted a warning because she realized that what Zero stepped on was not solid ground at all. A huge shadow looms over them. The head of a giant serpent emerges from the mud. It turned out that the stone Zero leaned on was actually the back of the boss serpent. Just as things started to heat up, a huge trash serpent rises straight out of the murky swamp. Our guy instantly realizes they are in a terrible situation. Dodging in knee-deep mud is practically impossible. Amari's completely ruins the mood, laughing as if they were just sitting ducks about to be eaten. Lily did not tolerate this and gave her a scolding while Zero checks if Gyusuku can move at all. It turned out the poor girl was completely stuck in the mud, so in battle she is a real burden. Zero is sweating, trying to find solid ground under his feet to finally fight back. He looks the monster in the eyes and together with his little spirit tries to come up with a clever plan. Suddenly, a light bulb went off in their heads. They realized what was happening beneath their feet. He barked at Lily, "Use your ice magic, freeze the swamp." She thinks he is asking for a world-class spell and grumbles that she can't freeze everything around. and he clarifies that he only needs a sturdy platform under their feet. The plan is simple. Lily freezes a small patch under their feet, and Zero becomes bait to distract aggro from the snake. But then a man in a cloak intervenes and suggests simply freezing the snake itself. They say Lily calls him a complete fool, explaining that it would cost an insane amount of mana. Even if they managed it, such a muscular snake would just show off its muscles and instantly shatter the ice. Although logic was against it, the boy just smiles and still asks Lily to try. Lily decides to take a risk, tells Zero to cover the others, and she focuses herself. Zero picks up Guska, helps him stand. They are ready to move the squad to a safer place. They retreat sharply, trying to break away from the monster. Zero still doubts, can this pair really handle a boss-level threat with just one spell? The one in the cloak simply told Lily, stay calm and hit the snake with your most powerful magic. Lily shouts freeze, releasing her energy, and Zero's jaw drops. This is not just a light frostbite, a huge dome of absolute zero magic exploded from her palms. The entire area was blinded by light, and icy crystals scattered all around. Zero can hardly believe his eyes as the swamp turns into an Arctic wasteland. When the fog clears, the giant snake is completely frozen in a huge ice pillar. Lily is completely stunned by what happened, and the guy in the cloak just smiles as if it was all part of a speedrun. She definitely knows that her stats are not that high, and understands it was not only her power at work here. Zero watches them from afar and gradually forms a picture in his mind of what just happened. But there is no time for debriefing. Zero feels that the danger is not over yet. He shouts for them to move away because huge blocks of ice are starting to fall from the sky. While the others panic, the boy in the cloak slyly winks and tells them not to just duck there. Amari's instantly springs into action, calls everyone to move back, and prepares to take the hit herself. She rushes forward and shields the group from the falling debris. The ice falls with a deafening crash, raising a huge cloud of snow and steam. Gyusuku rushes to check on everyone, hoping that no one was crushed by the glacier collapse. The group is safe. The boy in the cloak even gets a cheeky hug from Amari's, and Zero and Gyusuku look quite annoyed. Finally got out of the swamp, catching their breath while the sun slowly set. Lily is still stuck in thought, wondering why her magic felt so different and extraordinarily powerful there. Zero tries to look calm, tells her that everything is fine, everyone got out of there alive and well. Zero deep in his soul knows that something is definitely wrong with that boy in the cloak. He glanced at the smiling man and felt some secret power that he could not fully comprehend. But the burden of this secret clearly takes its toll on him, and he tells the group that he is simply tired and needs to go to sleep. Dasuku waves to him with a bright smile and sincerely thanks him for the ride. Zero feels that he is getting closer to meeting the last great spirit. He lies down under the moonlight, but gloomy thoughts race through his mind. He tells himself that as soon as everything becomes clear, he will finally be able to surrender. A harsh cliffhanger. Our boy finally faces the truth he has been avoiding all this time, and the squad, after dealing with that giant snake, finally sits by the Kaysali pond. This location is the last frontier of their current mission. While the girls wasted no time and jumped into the water to refresh themselves, our boy Zero remained on alert. Lily and the rest are wildly delighted they are back in their element. They behave as if this is just a beach episode for the record, but the atmosphere here is definitely suspicious. Of course, the local sycophant tries to offer help to wash their backs, but he is immediately brushed off. Zero literally has to drag him out before he ruins his own reputation. Our guy is not in the mood for jokes and quickly slapped his teammate so he wouldn't get distracted. Even when a calm landscape prevails around, Zero cannot shake the feeling that something is wrong. Kuya notices that Zero is sweating terribly and decides to get to the bottom of what is really bothering him. He asks if Zero doesn't feel like an outsider, despite the great honor of their journey. He even hints that Zero might think that all this is some kind of mistake. Zero cannot hold back laughter. Kuya is trying to convince him otherwise. An unpleasant realization he has nothing to respond with. Sudden screams from the pond interrupted their deep conversation and forced them to rush back. They find the girls in a strange predicament. The water itself behaves like a crowd of trash. Instead of helping immediately, Kuya suggests watching first, proving that he is a true connoisseur. Zero will not tolerate this and slaps him again, demanding that they find a way to fix this problem. A mysterious voice calls them rude for condemning the pond's behavior. Suddenly, the water explodes with a huge splash. This is a sign that the true level of power will now be revealed. The girls froze in shock. The real boss has finally arrived. She introduces herself as the Great Water Entity and kindly invites them into her realm. Zero immediately calls her a perverted spirit as soon as she admits that she missed the feeling of young skin. She ignores their insolence and acknowledges that they have already met other great spirits. Kuya does not hesitate. He decisively declares that he will become the ruler of humans and spirits to fix the glitch in the world's magic. The spirit recognizes Kuya's answer and addresses him as the Great Spirit of Light. There it is. The girls are simply stunned by this revelation. But Zero is stuck in his own thoughts and puts together clues he has noticed for several days. He is the only one who can interact with the blackstone barriers that weaken other spirits, and his ability to see Chibai was always a huge alarming bell. He tried to ignore the truth, but reality looked him straight in the face. The water entity turns its gaze on him and calls him the Great Dark Spirit Zero. This is the last piece of the puzzle that finally proves his humanity is already in the past. When it turned out that Zero was actually a great spirit, the girls were completely confused and lost their composure. Our guy is in complete denial. He doesn't believe he could be so legendary. He thought that if he were a spirit, he would just be another one of those cute chibis, not a giant creature in a human body. The wolf girl is not going to tolerate this and decisively demands the lady explain what the hell is going on here. Zero finally exploded, shouting, "Shut up, who do you think is the most confused here?" Even during the crisis, Zero can't help but notice that the spirit lady is a real bombshell. The rest of the harem is not thrilled that he stared like that, so they send him murderous looks. Zero tries to quell the irritation and asks them to go change clothes so they can focus. Lady Spirit only giggles. She is so pleased to hear a compliment about her appearance. She even drops a bomb, "If you want, I don't mind being your fourth, you know." Now Zero returns to the topic and asks if what was said about the Great Spirit is true. The lady becomes more serious and begins to tell the legend about the great spirits of light and darkness. First of all, she reveals, the great spirit of light, he is the one who will fix the world. They are torn from among the dead of this world, so his body is essentially a ghost. Meanwhile, the great dark spirit, the one who overturns the world and comes from another dimension. She looks him straight in the eyes and confirms, and this is you, Zero. Zero wonders why they are in human form and do not look like garbage creatures. They say it is so that they absorb human experiences and make choices based on them. If they choose someone from the locals, they will get stuck in the narrow confines of the usual thinking of this world. They were simply trying to unravel everything based on what they already knew. But Zero is a true wild card because he is not bound by the common sense of this world. He can make decisions relying only on his knowledge. Thus, the spirit of light gently restores the world without destroying it. And the dark spirit changes it regardless of local rules. Being human is just a speedrun strategy, to quickly run through the world to understand it better than Chibai ever could. She said. She continues to explain and they listen attentively. Zero understands he has truly gone beyond the human. The girls look at him sweating because they feel the burden of his new fate. The woman asks, "So what have you decided?" Zero firmly knows the most important thing for him still is to save Chibai. He must protect those who have turned into black stones without destroying anyone's life. A part of him whispers that the best move is to erase the magic and free the spirits. If he hadn't met his friends, he probably would have completely weakened magic in the whole world. He knows from a previous life, people can manage perfectly well without magic. But then he looks around and realizes, it is magic that makes this world beautiful. Chibis fill this world with a color he does not want to erase. He clenches his fist, stuck in a huge storm of rage and pain. He admits that he still hasn't grasped the perfect answer. But time is short, so she hands him a staff in which the power of all the great spirits is concentrated. Their last stop is the orphan castle in the very heart of the continent. Only there can their wish become reality. The journey is officially approaching its climax, and the excitement is real. Finally, Zero has gathered the last great spirit and completed his collection. Koya is simply going crazy. Our guy actually managed to collect the full set. But although everything seemed like sheer exhaustion, Zero confirms he met all 4 big shots. But the celebration suddenly breaks off. A higher-ranking spirit warns them, do not relax. Gray finally begins to ask real questions about the secret dungeon hidden beneath the royal castle. They say there is an altar down there to speak directly with the great dev in the sky. Suddenly night fell, looking as if it had just survived a complete annihilation. He drops to his knees to tell Amaris the worst possible news. It turned out that the Spirit Liberation Army just rushed through the castle like sprinters and captured everything in their path. Zero demands details, and Kuya seems to be sweating all over. Amaris boils with rage and suspects that Kuya knew about this raid from the very beginning. Zero bursts in and demands that Kuya stop putting obstacles and finally explain what is happening. Koi tries to play the card, "I am doing this for the sake of peace." He doesn't even care if the castle is destroyed. The main thing is that it restores magical power. He tracked how mana disruptions were spreading worldwide and now wants to overthrow the entire system. Zero openly throws in the face, "You are actually planning a bloody coup to replace the government." Kuya admits that he is ready to be destroyed by the army as long as his mission is accomplished. But he understands that the timing is very bad. They are not yet ready for the next stage. The secret highlight of his plan is something called the Stone of Black Magic. The strategy was simple: to use these stones as bait to attract monsters to the castle. The girls turn to stone with horror, seeing how cold-blooded this plan was. Kuya emphasizes that the recent surge of trash mobs near the capital was not just bad luck. It was all because of the stones secretly hidden under the king's feet. These stones are like a beacon that turns every nearby monster into a fierce beast. Zero realizes that placing those stones in the capital is effectively a death sentence. This pushes the king to send guards to the gates, and he himself remains completely exposed to a treacherous blow in the back. The knight, like a witness, confirms the minister and the knight captain have already made their move. Zero wonders how the minister manages that stone at all. They usually drain all the strength from a person to the last drop. It turns out the minister is a cool researcher who found a clever bypass. Grace accidentally slips up. All this time she was holding one of the stones and she had no harmful effects. Koya explains with a smile that she is holding a rare completed version that does not drain the user's mana. The maid nervously asks what will happen to the monsters when the castle is gone. At first, Kuya plans simply to send the stones to God to relieve the monster's aggression. But while Zero has not yet achieved full power, the castle will just be looted. The girls understand how devilish this setup is and start flaming Kuya. There is no more time for talk. They need to storm the castle before the game ends. Zero sums up simply, the source of all delays in the world sits right in the capital. He clenches his fist, ready to start the final fight with the boss. He understands that overthinking is for losers, and it's time to get his hands dirty. Although the enemies have the home field advantage, our guy doesn't doubt for a moment he will definitely win this fight. With a defiant smile, the craziest Yankee in the world prepares to crush the coup with his own courage alone. Zero, Koya, and the team stand on the verge of literally rewriting the map. Our guy is not just clearing a path. He is carving a huge canyon through the swamp as if it were a regular terraforming mod. Amaris and Grace are simply in complete shock from the raw manifestations of the Great Spirits. It turns out that having the Great Spirits of Light and Darkness on the team is almost a cheat code. Amaris did not hesitate and ordered everyone to return to the southern village at double time. As they rush, Zero suddenly realizes his earth magic is essentially a loophole in the very laws of physics of this world. He admires his stats, while Kuya is tearing apart the exhausted knights for being so slow. Zero begins to piece together the puzzle why the Spirit Liberation Army moved their deadlines forward. Koya has no answers, but he clearly feels the pressure. Without such strong players as Lily and Grace, who are currently outside the capital, the city's defense looks like a complete joke. Zero drops a bomb. The enemy probably now considers Koya a traitor. The goal is clear. The rebels want to exterminate the royal family and seize the sanctuary under the castle. Kuya tries to argue, but he is simply grabbed and dragged. There is no time for arguments. Amaris is in full sergeant mode, yelling at them to move their legs. Amid the chaos, Zero notices Lily. She looks a bit sad. She asks if he is really a great spirit, and our guy just shrugs as if it's no big deal. He is actually calm about having become a Chibai spirit because he already died once in a past life. Lily sincerely smiled at him, feeling that he has a good heart. Finally, they arrived at the nearest town, and the sun is already beginning to set. Even if the carriage rushes straight to the capital, the journey will take a whole day. Suddenly, a group of knights from Amari's fan club runs out to greet them. They are almost sobbing because they could not protect the king. It turns out the king is now barricaded in his room, and Minister Gamas is staging a real betrayal. Amars immediately takes command and calls an urgent meeting to discuss strategy. Chaos reigns in the capital. Crowds of enraged goblins are raging through the streets. Sending elite units inside now is like a suicide mission due to such a number of enemies. Zero is tired of delays and decisively barked at everyone, "Shut up and listen." Amaris feels he is plotting something. He asks the soldiers if there is anyone among them who can at least use basic earth magic. His plan is a real speedrun stratagem, to dig a huge tunnel straight into the underground sanctuary. The room froze in dead silence as they comprehended how crazy it sounded. Kuya burst out laughing and called the plan completely impossible. He explains that even if they share mana, it will run out long before they reach the castle. Kuya thinks that his 112 contracts with spirits are something incredible, but in reality he is still just a small fish. He tells Zero that his plan will not succeed. He is too new in this world to make contracts. Grace looks worried, wondering if the plan is doomed to fail right from the start. At that moment, our guy decides to show off his gacha luck, and reveals that he has as many as 354 contracts. A real ocean of Chibai spirits appears, and this proves that his power level is simply off the charts. The real-time counter suddenly jumped up to 357. The soldiers were just stunned in shock. Grace silenced the doubters, sternly ordering the noisy crowd, "Silence." She vouches for Zero and tells everyone that despite his scary face, he is a good person. She explains no one cares for the spirits like he does. While the Liberation Army treats spirits as disposable trash, Zero considers them his family. Grace, a little moved, admits she just wants to help our guy win. Amara steps forward, supports her sister, and gives all her trust to Zero. Even soldiers begin to switch to his side, remembering how he previously gave them strength. Zero is still offended because everyone teased him about his face, but he doesn't stay angry for long. And when you see that the girl smiles and believes in him, all this exhausting work becomes worth it. He quietly whispered thank you, preparing for the mission. Amari's gives the final green light digging can begin. The great magical operation received the green light, and the team is preparing to break their way to victory. The crew is now rushing full speed to the capital, breaking through a giant network of tunnels. The girls are just shocked Zero carved such a deep passage on the first try. Our guy assures he only enhanced the soldier's magic, not carrying all the hard work himself. Still, the immense power of the Great Spirit is not something you can simply ignore. Finally, they arrived at the underground cave. They have to leave the vehicle and continue on foot. But this place is huge, and even the highest-level villain hunters are stunned by the scale of the hole under the city. The stakes are high. The enemy has probably entrenched themselves at the most important points, such as near the altar. Zero decides to move in a small group to remain unnoticed, while the soldiers rush to save the king. They head to the center, where the altar is supposed to stand. Of course, what kind of dungeon crawl is it if you don't run into a few minor enemies along the way? Instead of any scheming, the girls decide the only way out is a frontal attack. Zero does not hesitate and throws himself into the attack right in the enemy's face. Enemy mages unleashed a storm of spells, but Lily rushed forward and with her protection pulled aggro out of harm's way. A huge explosion shook the tunnel, and the eccentric ones in cloaks believed they had truly finished the target. They are already celebrating and reminding each other that the spirits must be alive for their twisted plans. But as soon as the smoke clears, an ice wall appears without a single scratch. Lily only smiles slyly, says it's a trivial matter and prepares to freeze them all. The mages throw fire spells one after another, trying to melt the barrier, but it literally does not move. Zero laughs off, explaining that the ice is soaked with his magic, so it simply cannot be broken. The enemies begin to sweat profusely and call him a true demon, while the group just passes by them. Grace is already burning with impatience to enter the fight, but Kuya insists that he will handle the remaining waves himself. Zero warns him, if you keep showing off, your mana might run out. Koya simply says that he will endure this exhausting routine with courage alone, because he finally feels he can protect everyone. Zero falls for his heroic act and tells him that because of that selflessness, he has a terrible character. Suddenly, the group froze as the path opened before them. Finally, they found a huge altar connected to the gods. But just as they were about to celebrate achieving the goal, someone shouted, "Wait." From the shadows emerges the premier, huge and formidable, like a true final boss. He mocks their ignorance and calls Kuya to begin the ritual. The entire squad simply froze at what they saw. Kuya simply throws them a cold look and admits that he has been working for the villains from the very beginning. The girls are stunned by the betrayal, praying that it is only a cruel joke. But Kuya just waved his hand, said thank you for everything that has been so far, and headed to the altar. Zero simply narrowed his eyes, as if ready to erase the traitor on the spot. The old man with the monocle insistently demands more magic from Kuya, saying that only this way can he take care of the group. He smugly admits that he was the rat who was behind the quest about the lizardmen all along. Amaris does not listen to his excuses and prepares to finish off this clown once and for all. Suddenly, a huge magical circle exploded in the air, pulsing with a dark and terrible aura. Lily instantly recognizes this forbidden ritual is a demon summoning. This burly machine monster burst out of the portal and looked like a real nightmare. Wasting no time, the beast releases a wave of hellfire that threatens to turn the entire room to ashes. Lily barely manages to deploy an ice shield to prevent the team from being wiped out. The clash of fire and ice gives birth to a furious storm of steam and pressure. The villain laughed ominously and ordered the group to burn to ashes while his monster rages. Even with Zero Lily's colossal reserve of magic, she warns that the ice will not withstand such heat. The barrier begins to crack and melt under the relentless heat of demonic flames. Suddenly, Princess Grace steps forward. She is tired of feeling like a burden in every battle. She reveals that she can also use fire magic and becomes the first person Zero truly recognizes. The villain in the monocle mockingly calls her just a useless princess. Zero ignores the mockery and decides to flood her with raw magic. Grace absorbs this energy like a true champion and prepares for a huge risk. She tightly grips the staff and in her gaze is pure determination. Again, stepping out from behind the safety of the ice wall, she walks straight into hell. The old man shouts for her to turn to ashes. Grace gathers her thoughts and focuses, realizing she must take the spirits under control to tame this flame. Zero looks at his partner. Trust is instant, without any delay. Strutting fully, Grace stands completely unharmed while the fire swirls around her. She not only survived the attack, she successfully intercepted the fire of the demon itself. She said threateningly to the villain, "Don't look down on me, the great dark spirit is on my side." Panicking, the old man desperately begs Koya to give him strength to save his collapsing plan. Kuya just looks at him coldly. It is clear that his magic is completely exhausted. He admits it took quite some time to drain the old man's resources while he was stalling. He pulls out no stolen magic stones, and this proves he is a true loot goblin. The old man shouts about betrayal, and Kuya is completely indifferent. He explains that he only does what he wants, regardless of the consequences. The madman barely finishes his tirade when Zero knocks him down with a single punch to the face. The rest of the merchants are already gathered in a heap and tied up in the background. Amaris looks with a stone expression, realizing that the immediate threat has passed. Grace shines with anticipation, waiting for Zero to praise her brilliant move. He finally tells her well done, and she immediately lights up with joy. Of course, she immediately makes a scene, complaining that he should have confessed to her instead. But the victory celebration is interrupted by a sudden piercing scream. Amaris rushes forward as Koyu is suddenly knocked down by an unknown force. Koyu is thrown into the air, coughing up blood, and the air becomes heavy. Zero suddenly realizes he has just encountered a monster of a completely different power level. Amara does not retreat, becoming a shield in front of the wounded Koyu, protecting him from the one who just appeared. The real boss, Gomus, finally steps into the light like an invincible wall of steel. Gaumlis, the knight commander of the kingdom, steps into the light with a self-satisfied look. Zero immediately tries to stabilize the wounded Koyu, using special medicine for his chibai spirits. Our guy does not know at all who this jockidiot is, but he sees trouble from afar. Zero demands an answer. Why did the influential official betray his post? Homless insists that he is doing it for the sake of peace, but he does it in his own way twisted. He has a cunning plan in his head, to completely sever the thread that connects humanity with the spirits. Zero cannot believe the audacity of this real giant standing before him. The logic is simple. If people stop relying on magic, the spirits will finally stop fading. Gaumlis admits he is actually Zero at magic and rose through the ranks only by the power of steel. He clearly knew that he could not touch the premier. He has several contracts with the spirits. He seeks to create a world ruled only by brute force, where spirits have no influence at all. Zero simply calls him a damn gorilla and mocks his inflated ego. Amaris loses patience and decisively tells him, shut up immediately. Even before she could rush forward, the commander sharply ordered, look at the ground beneath your feet. He covered the floor with black stones, and they instantly attract the aggro of all the monsters around. The whole room is like a bomb with a timer, about to explode any moment. He knew that without a strategy, he could not fight the powerful spirit alone against two. If they use magic, they will shatter the stones and destroy the altar. He breaks the stone with one strike to prove he is not bluffing. Amaris decisively orders everyone to retreat and closely watch Kai. She decides to deal with this scoundrel on her own with her blade. She feels guilty. She did not stop her mentor earlier before everything went so far. The clash begins without any delay. She rushes forward. Their blades collided with such force that the whole room trembled. It is a lightning-fast exchange that would make any professional gamer sweat. And Gumlis is truly impressed by how much she has leveled up since their last meeting. Zero watches in admiration as she dodges every stone, fighting with insane precision. Her sisters understand. Right now she is fueled only by pure self-hatred and regret. Two warriors clashed blades in a desperate test of pure strength. Amaris demands to know why he is acting so incredibly stupid. He says he is just cleaning up the mess that the royal family ignored for years. He asked why her family is allowed to rule, but he is not. Amara yells at him, shut up, and puts all her strength into the next strike. Imagine she really gains the upper hand and demands that he surrender completely. Gamos just gave a crooked smile and told her that she has really changed. Zero sees the trap and shouts to her, don't let your guard down. Amaris realizes his mistake for a split second, and it's already too late. A powerful explosion of energy, the sensor flew back in complete shock. Golmless mocks her, saying she became soft and didn't finish the job when she had the chance. He attacks to end her with one final blow once and for all. But Zero throws himself forward and takes the hit with his body. Our guy is literally drenched in sweat, but he will never let her get hurt. He broke his bones again but still stands his ground. When Zero looks at the commander, his facial expression turns eerily cold. Gaumlis thinks he has won, the group is cornered and broken. And he even had the audacity to suggest they start working together. Zero just looks at him, and in his eyes is a pure desire to kill. Gaumlis does not back down and offers a deal that sounds like a real trap. While the villain waits for an answer, our guy looks over the team and makes sure Amaku is okay after those cursed stones drained her mana. He does not hesitate, immediately orders everyone to take Chibai's medicine and promptly patch up each one. After handing over the tube for safekeeping, Zero suddenly changed completely. He no longer pretends to be kind and tells the group that now he will give this old man a legendary beating. Gamas just laughs, thinking that this rascal can stand against an experienced commander at all. Zero is not scared at all, boasting that in his old world he was a real machine. He offers the old man the good old ritual, challenges him to a real fistfight. Gumless takes the bait, thinking that he has the advantage in hand-to-hand combat. But Zero knows that against Amaku's magic he is weaker, so he forces close combat to protect the black stones. Even Chibai loudly cheers him on as he steps into the ring. The stakes are high. If Gumless wins, the whole team will have to surrender. The commander bursts in like a truck, shouting that he will not regret his life choices. But Zero does not fight fair. He immediately strikes with a sneaky frontal blow, and Gomlis is completely unprepared. He delivers another accurate strike. It seems this speedrun is already in his pocket. Gamos suddenly realizes Zero is not just some random guy but a street-hardened veteran. Zero just smiles, admitting that he is not a knight and doesn't care whether to fight fair. They began exchanging devastating blows, and the shockwaves made the girl break out in a cold sweat. Gamlis hits like a real gorilla, and Zero receives a furious barrage of strikes. Although he is being broken, Zero does not give up on his goal. Despite the blood, Zero still smiles like a madman. Gamlas thinks he is about to deliver the finishing blow and end the fight right here. But Zero responds with another brutal headbutt, shouting at the gorilla not to look down on him. This time the blow was so strong that Gamas's head was sharply thrown back in pain. Standing battered, Zero suddenly reveals that all this time he was hiding something under his hoodie. Lily looks in horror, thinking that our guy is already on the edge. It turned out Zero stuffed a stone axe under his clothes, a sneaky trick to take all those heavy blows. Lily is simply stunned. He carries something incredibly heavy just for tactical advantage. Gaumlis is boiling with rage and Zero just laughs, telling him this is not his only surprise. He demands his pipe back, ready to put an end to this farce. Zero reveals the real plan. He took that beating only to pin Gaumlis to one spot. While they were fighting, Chibai was frantically picking up every black stone around. Gamos suddenly realizes he was used as a Chibai stump, a huge pile of stones right behind his back. Zero aims the weapon, calling Gaumlis a burly fool one last time. When Gaumlis yells about a foul, Zero coldly reminds him that he is a Yankee, not a hero. Zero lets release, whacking Gaumlis through the pipe without any delay. He lunges at him with words, listing one by one all the reasons why the commander deserves this beating. The rest of the group watches the bloodshed, feeling both admiration and complete disgust at the lack of dignity. I Gaumlis found myself tied to a pole, looking as if I had been completely erased. Zero shrugged off and told everyone that in a real fight only the result matters. The threat was repelled, and finally the group found themselves before an ancient altar. At last they reached the end of this exhausting journey. Even the Chibai versions of the team stand rooted to the spot, not knowing what to do next. Next, Zero decides to raise his pipe, filled with spirit, to the mechanism. He slammed his weapon on the ground and roared, "Eat this as your last offering." Suddenly, the whole room exploded with a blinding flash of light. This powerful burst of energy is the beginning of the end of their mission. Zero opens his eyes. He looks completely battered after the fight. He gets up, covered in dirt and blood after that dazzling light in the sanctuary. The group finds themselves in a huge ancient library that looks like a secret level from a DLC. The girls broke out in sweat when they realized that this was the legendary place where God lives. Kuya notices that Zero seems to recognize the layout of this place, and Zero admits that this is where he was first resurrected. Suddenly, a group of real giants appears before them, burly and formidable, who came to challenge them. One of the higher-ranking beings angrily scolds them, asking why they struck the shrine instead of praying, while the villain in the center of the group just laughs and demands their final answer. Zero and Kia stand proudly, ready to complete their main mission. Koya keeps it simple, just says that his answer is the same as last time they spoke. Everyone turns their gaze to Zero, holding their breath waiting to hear his determination. And then out of nowhere, this skinny boy with glasses appears. The girls are completely confused and demand to know who this nerd is, but Zero calmly drops a bombshell. He is actually God. Just smirked. Zero called him Four Eyes and didn't even ask for permission. Tension rises as God talks about the last reward. They have only one chance left to use their power once and change the world forever. They could choose to become rulers of the world or simply erase all people if they decide that humanity is trash. Zero asks for confirmation, as if persistently checking that he essentially has a sandbox mode for reality. God asks if this journey finally helped him find the answer he was looking for. Zero begins a monologue, sincerely admitting that he is from a world without magic and knows people will survive on their own. But traveling through this world, he finally understood. It is a true masterpiece, primarily because of Chibai. He insists that without magic, people will simply invent technology that will destroy nature at an accelerated pace. Chibai are special. They make contracts only with those they sincerely like. Everything is about that mutual connection and tenderness. Zero shows his brilliant move, rotation. He wants to completely separate the spirit forest from the human world. When a spirit runs out of mana and turns into stone, it automatically teleports to the forest to recover there. Thus, even broken stones can stay close to their friends while they heal. This is a system where people can still use magic, and at the same time do not force spirits to make deals they do not want. God confirms the plan has not weakened, and it can really be implemented. Kuya says the idea is simply fire and agrees with the plan. He laughs and notes that Zero never changes after all. He always puts spirits above all else. However, God reveals this plan has one huge flaw. If no one guides them, the spirits themselves will not be able to get out of the forest. Alright, Zero returns to God, ready to make this sacrifice. The girls understand his intention and panic, shouting for him to stay while he prepares to leave them behind. Zero threw like thunder, he is the one who must stay behind. Grace immediately starts sweating profusely, refusing to believe that her boyfriend will be weakened so much that he will be kicked out of the team. The one in glasses explains that the great spirits have their own work, so they have no choice. Koya admits that even with his magic, he is not suitable for this mission. He admits that Zero has been carrying the team all this time, spending his own mana reserves. Our guy is actually much more exhausted than he shows. Even after he continuously cast the most powerful spells, he still smirked. This man is a true giant. He builds walls and tunnels so that not a single spirit breaks. Grace is in despair. If he leaves, he will have to play alone forever. Lily tries to persuade him to stay and enjoy the world they just saved. But Zero is determined to cross to the other side. He understands ahead is only a lonely, exhausting routine. You look at his blood-stained clothes, and you can see at what cost this journey came. He does this to repay the Chibis who saved him right at the very beginning. For the last time, he reaches out his hand. For the last time, he gently stroked Lily and Grace on the head, apologizing for the sudden departure. The girls cry so much that their tears would be enough to fill a bottle of mana. Zero sharply turns to the boy in glasses and says that next time he better have better explanations. He leaves his chibai under his care. Then he harshly humiliates Koya, calls him a weakling, and tells Amaris to watch over him. Lily loses her composure, and Zero says that she is not usually this emotional. He thanks her for always watching over the group. Grace clung to aggro and pulls, shouting that she will not let him go. Zero just smiled, giving her credit for how much he has changed. He thanked her one last time. Grace completely broke down from emotions at that moment. She calls him unfair for just leaving like that. Zero just laughed, waved it off, and sincerely thanked all the Chibai for being with him until the end. He begged them to continue protecting the people of this world. Finally, he throws to the side the four eyes, press the switch. Suddenly, a gigantic magical circle appears beneath him. He is suddenly sucked into the portal, and he even grumbles about traveling without delays. His last scream echoes as he disappears from the server. But let's rewind time 1 year ahead. Grace is on the road again and looks like a true buddy. After talking with the king, she decided to set out on a journey to truly understand this world. She is determined to do her best, even if she feels weak. Meanwhile, Amari still forces Kuya to work to exhaustion. She is now a knight captain, and everyone unmistakably sees they are just flirting in front of everyone. Lily has also grown up a bit. All this time, these two girls traveled together. Finally, they returned to the Forest of Spirits, where it all began. Suddenly, they were surrounded by a pack of trash goblins. Their magic was completely exhausted, they couldn't even cast a simple protective shield. The world Grace and Lily were stuck between escape and a fight doomed to fail. Out of nowhere, a blinding explosion of light erupted, instantly wiping out the entire group of goblins. Grace froze from the overwhelming power of the attack. Lily wonders who could possibly have so much firepower. A hand reaches through the smoke. Oh, it's our guy Zero acting as if he never left. The girls look as if they just saw a ghost. Zero admits maybe he overdid it trying to return quickly. It seems he brought so many spirits to the other side that he tore the magical flow of the world again. Now he will have to travel around the whole world to fix the mess he made. He looked at the girls and said decisively, time to move. They are shocked he wants them to go with him. He reminds them of the promise they made a year ago. Grace and Lily are fully in this, ready to follow him forever. They promise to stay by his side. Zero smiles boldly, ready again to conquer the world with his team. The journey continues, the whole company is together again.